Chapter 154. In the Woodleaf Ninja Village, two guests came to the tricolor meatball shop. Both of them wore conical bamboo hats and black cloaks with fiery clouds on their bodies. But such attire wasn't too strange here. "What would you like to order?" Itachi said skillfully, "One meatball, matcha." Then the shop assistant looked at the other person. The man glanced at the person beside him and said, "Same." After the two sat down, Kisame smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to like sweets." Itachi replied, "What's wrong?" Kisame shook his head and said, No, I just heard people say that people who like sweets are more cute." Itachi looked at Kisame. "I'm cute." Kisame suddenly didn't know how to answer. Itachi's rigid face had nothing to do with cute anyway. Finally he said, "The person who said that probably has a hole in his head." Itachi continued to look at Kisame. Fortunately, the meatballs came up faster, and Kisame covered his embarrassment with meatballs. After a few skewers of meatballs, Kisame changed the topic, "But the target is not in Woodleaf, and he's with that guy. It's not easy to do it." Itachi concentrated on eating meatballs, ignoring Kisame's question. He came silently and left silently. Except for taking a few skewers of meatballs from Woodleaf with his stomach, nothing else happened. But there was a crow outside Sasuke's ward for a long time today. Finally, Hana felt that the crow outside the window was unlucky and drove it away. After leaving Woodleaf, Itachi finally said, "They are looking for another one of the Sannin, hoping to find the target before they find him." Kisame looked embarrassed. "Even if there is only one, it's not something we can deal with, right?" Uchiha Itachi replied, "Ah, yes." Kisame then asked, "That person has no weakness? You used to be in Woodleaf, so you should know more or less, right?" Itachi thought about it, straightened his hat, and said, "Does being lecherous count?" At the same time, Naruto and Jiraiya did meet another Sannin, but it wasn't the one they wanted to meet, it was Orochimaru. What was fate? Was it a glance from the corner of the street? Or was it a street corner encounter? The moment they turned the corner and saw each other, the four of them had mixed feelings. Orochimaru was the first to speak. "Long time no see." "Jiraiya." Jiraiya's face became gloomy, and he mocked, "Your eyes are still so fierce." Naruto kept smiling and looked at Kabuto, who was standing beside Orochimaru, and said sweetly, "Kabuto-senpai, I am so happy to see you." The veins on Medicine Master Pocket's face bulged as he gritted his teeth and said, "Ah. I also miss you day and night." During Chunin's second exam, if he hadn't summoned the giant python in time and hid in its mouth, he would have died in my love's sandstorm. He hated Naruto to the bone. But later, for the sake of Orochimaru's plan, he had been holding back. Jiraiya looked at Medicine Master Pocket, then looked at Naruto and said strangely, "It seems that you know each other." Naruto kept smiling and replied, "Yes, Kabuto-senpai took care of me during Chunin's exam." Jiraiya replied, "Then you deal with the glasses, and I will deal with Orochimaru." While they were talking, a giant python suddenly drilled out of the ground. Orochimaru was standing on the head of the giant python. Jiraiya and Naruto's reaction wasn't slow, and they dodged. At the same time, Medicine Master Pocket disappeared. On the other side, Jiraiya bit his finger and shouted, "Naruto, I will let you see the power of summoning, and you will regret not worshipping me as your sensei." Then he quickly made hand seals and pressed it to the ground. But before he pressed it to the ground, another snake drilled out and knocked Jiraiya away. Naruto complained, "Did you summon this snake? After being taught a lesson by Toad, you want to add another snake to the fight?" This sentence really pierced the old man's heart. Being taught a lesson by Toad was naturally referring to Toad Gamabunta, who said that if he used it as a transportation tool again, he would break off their friendship. At the same time, Orochimaru mocked, "Jiraiya, you are still the same idiot as before, you can't even use summoning jutsu." Jiraiya's face turned green, and he even wondered if he forgot to look at the almanac before going out. Everything was going wrong today. When Naruto mocked Jiraiya, a pair of hands suddenly stretched out from under Naruto's feet and grabbed Naruto's feet. Medicine Master Pocket's Earth Release Ninjutsu, Mirror Fish in the Earth. This scene couldn't be seen from Naruto's perspective, but the white dove in the sky could see it, so what the white dove saw was also seen by Naruto. Because the white dove was Naruto's doppelganger, and Naruto and this doppelganger had established a spiritual link and shared vision. Going back to the past, Naruto also knew that Orochimaru was on the other side of the street before they met, because the white dove saw it. So, whether it was a glance back at the street corner or a meeting at the street corner, it was all bullshit. Substitution Jutsu. Naruto exchanged places with the white dove. Naruto appeared in midair. Then he raised his hand and slapped the ground from top to bottom. There was a kind of secret technique that was used from top to bottom. Such a sentence suddenly appeared in Naruto's mind, and at the same time, the name of the secret technique. So he shouted, "Watch me, Buddha's palm." Naruto has such a skill. Then, in the next moment, will a huge Buddha's palm appear from the ground? But the palm print didn't appear. After the white dove and Naruto exchanged places, he transformed all the chakra in his body into the ice attribute chakra. A cold wind swept across, and the ground within 10 square meters was frozen into ice crystals. The hands didn't dodge and were frozen into 2 icicles. The chakra in Naruto's hand quickly gathered, and the wind attribute chakra pushed his body and accelerated his fall. He didn't have Buddha's palm, but he had a sandbag-sized ball. Rasengan. The Rasengan hit the ground. A deep hole was created in the ground, and then the ground collapsed. It was a hole created after the Rasengan exploded in the ground and stirred up the soil. However, to his disappointment, Yakushi's body wasn't among them. Naruto exerted force on his feet and flew out in the next moment, carefully on guard. At the moment of the fight, the cold released by the doppelganger did freeze the hands, but before Naruto's Rasengan hit the hands, chakra suddenly broke out of the ice and escaped. Naruto was familiar with chakra. It was the chakra scalpel that Naruto was good at. Yakushi came out of the ground. There were a few pieces of ice on his hands, but they quickly evaporated. Then the hands were also healed. Medical ninjutsu, Yin healing ninjutsu, by condensing the yang attribute chakra in the body to achieve a local healing effect. People who are good at it can even achieve the effect of resisting damage and instant healing. Naruto can't do this. From this point of view, Yakushi's medical ninjutsu is above Naruto. After Yakushi's hands were healed, he ate a soldier food pill. Then he condensed chakra in his hands, and both hands became chakra scalpel. Naruto can't do it. Naruto raised his eyebrows and said, "You just suddenly appeared under me using Earth Release Ninjutsu? So your chakra has the Earth attribute chakra nature change?" Yakushi was stunned. Although there is no absolute connection between the Earth Release Ninjutsu and the Earth attribute chakra nature change. But he really can use the Earth attribute chakra nature change. Naruto answered his own question, "Then you die." Because Naruto now needs the Earth attribute chakra nature change. Someone sent me a pillow when I was sleepy. Naruto sighed, and then his body disappeared. Shikaku Secret Jutsu, Storm Wound. Jiraiya, who finally succeeded in sitting on the toad's head, noticed the scene of Naruto using body flicker technique and shouted, "Didn't you promise me not to use this technique?" Chapter 155. An ancient city made of blue-black bricks. The eaves were high and shaped like wings, so it was also called cornice. There were bells under the eaves, called wind chime, also called bird alarm bell, which was used to startle birds. To prevent birds from landing on the eaves and pooping, however, with the passage of time and the evolution of culture, it also has its own meaning, such as good luck. Adding a special meaning to the original things is a human habit. There is nothing wrong with this. After all, life is always thinking about the good side, or the cruel reality will crush people. But then it became nonsense, and the wind chime and feng shui were together. Well, I don't know if the demon god will feel annoyed by the bell and flip the house in anger. Of course, this is not important. The oiled paper hanging on the bottom of the wind chime is called short book, and its function is to support the wind, so when the wind blows, the bell will ring. This is the origin of the name Short Book Street. Ding ling ling. The wind blew on the red-oiled paper of the wind chimes, causing them to sway and ring the bells. Melodious chimes rang out in 2s and 3s, 7 or 8, some far and some near, some high and some low. It was as if they were in accordance with this special rhythm, adding a lonely and distant aura to this ancient city. It added a few traces of ancient charm. But soon this ancient charm was replaced by the sound of explosions. Maybe it was really the sound of the bell that startled the immortal. So the immortal summoned a big toad dozens of meters high and a big python hundreds of meters long to fight here and flip the house. Naruto, didn't you promise me not to use this trick? Jiraiya shouted at the top of his lungs. His momentum was fierce, and he even used chakra. Although Naruto didn't understand what the lion's roar technique was, if it really existed, it should be like this. Deafening. Naruto's Shikaku secret jutsu couldn't help but stagnate. Yakushi Kabuto seized the opportunity, and chakra in his hand began to shake violently, and the chakra scalpel cut the tendons of Naruto's arm. But Naruto was also a medical ninja, so how could he not know what Yakushi Kabuto was trying to do? He waved his finger, and a wind blade condensed at the tip of his finger, meeting the attack. But the wind blade didn't hurt the enemy, and it cut a bloody wound on Naruto's finger. Naruto was in pain. Although Naruto wasn't afraid of pain, since he self-destructed his doppelganger, his fingers were still connected to the heart. As a result, this seemingly elegant finger attack was not launched, and it was retracted midway. He leaned to the right and dodged Medicine Master Pocket's slash. With the opening of the first of the 8 inner hidden gates, Alchemist Pocket's movements seemed shrewd and ruthless. Although they were fierce and cunning, they weren't fast enough. At the same time, Shikaku's secret technique was withdrawn. The second gate of the 8 inner hidden gates, the second gate of the Gate of Healing, was opened. Naruto's vision strengthened again, and the power in his body surged. Naruto the Naruto's back. Pa! In the next moment, Medicine Master's pocket was sent flying by Naruto's kick that definitely weighed more than 720 kilograms. Naruto did not give chase. Instead, he stood in place, reminiscing about the kick just now. In fact, Naruto didn't practice any body techniques. That kick just now was completely relying on the enhanced vision of the first of the 8 inner hidden gates to subconsciously counterattack. Because he had dodged it, and because the angle was just right. But after kicking him out, Naruto's heart suddenly felt extremely satisfied. For the first time, he felt so satisfied fighting with someone in close combat. 1 word. Awesome. 2 words. How satisfying. 3 words. It's so cool. The effect of force was mutual. If one struck out, they would also feel the pain. Normal people would try their best to avoid it. But perhaps Naruto's masochist soul had suddenly awakened. He suddenly felt that being cautious and fighting hand-to-hand was his true love. Over 720 kilograms of strength, 1400 kilograms, a normal person would probably be directly split in 2. After Medicine Master Pocket crawled out of the hole in the wall, he actually only spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, the injury on his body healed by itself. The medical ninja's talent was definitely much stronger than Naruto's. Medicine Master Pocket's eyes were bloodshot. He gritted his teeth and said, "Naruto." Naruto took a deep breath. He stared at Medicine Master Pocket with fiery eyes. The next moment, he disappeared in place. Right straight punch. Bang. Medicine Master Pocket couldn't dodge in time. He crossed his hands in front of his body. This time, Medicine Master Pocket wasn't sent flying. Medicine Master Pocket, who was prepared, poured chakra into his arms and body to block this blow. Then Naruto was possessed by a mad dog. His left and right fists alternated and fiercely punched. Naruto found that although his body technique was great, he still seemed to be a bit weak now. So after the left straight punch, he opened his right hand and changed his fist into a palm. Chakra condensed in his palm, and a sandbag-sized ball appeared in his hand. Rasengan. Boom. Medicine Master Pocket was once again sent flying. He was still sent flying while spinning. He smashed into the wall like an electric drill, creating a deep hole. Awesome. Taijutsu plus Rasengan, this is the real way to use Rasengan. Naruto was very excited. He didn't care about Medicine Master Pocket's life or death. He kicked a beautiful whip leg in place. Then, chakra condensed in the instep, compressed and rotated. A meatball appeared on the back of his foot, and he kicked the greenish-black wall of the short book street. Then, the 10-meter-long wall was blown to pieces. He stepped forward and kicked horizontally. Chakra condensed in the sole of his foot, rotated and compressed. Another wall was blown apart. Then, he tore down a few more houses. Such a scene made Jiraiya on the toad stunned. At the same time, perhaps because the momentum was too big, it attracted two people to watch. There were two beautiful girls. One of them had beige hair tied into two ponytails, and she was wearing a bold V-shaped open-necked blouse. The other had short black hair and was tightly dressed. She was holding a piglet with a necklace in her hands. The two girls looked at each other. The girl holding the pink piglet said to the girl next to her who was wearing sexy clothes and looked flirtatious, "We actually encountered Jiraiya-sama and Orochimaru-sama fighting. Tsunade-sama, should we go over?" Flirtatious, mainly because of the purple mark between the girl's eyebrows. If the purple mark was covered, her face would be pure and cute. Her hair was parted in the middle. Her beige hair hung over her cheeks. She had an oval face, white skin, a small nose, brown eyes, and long eyelashes. No. I need to change the purple lip gloss to a girl's pink to call it cute. Right now, it's more flirtatious. That's not right. I need to change the V-shaped shirt too. Well, in that case, it could be called a child's face and breasts. But this person was called Tsunade, one of the Sannin. She was the same age as Jiraiya Orochimaru. If she said her age, would Naruto call her grandma? But with Naruto's shameless personality, he would probably call her sister. And he would say that because she looked like she was 19 or 20 years old, he would call her sister. Tsunade thought for a long time, turned to Shizune and said, "Shizune, I just won the first prize of 3 sevens." Jingin nodded and praised, "This is a joyous occasion for you." Well, in Shizune's opinion, Tsunade's luck, if she didn't run fast every time, she would definitely lose everything. Tsunade said with a dignified expression, "I have a bad feeling." The piglet in Shizune's arms squinted and looked over with his beady eyes. Tsunade pondered for a moment and made a decision. Their strength is about the same. Even if there is a gap, there won't be a life-and-death situation, so I think it's better if we don't go out. Shizune blinked and said, "Then let's go back to the hotel as if we didn't see it?" Tsunade shook her head and said, "No. We have to leave this place, as far away as possible." Shizune and Dolphin looked at each other. "Where are we going?" Tsunade said seriously, "Nowhere, the Earth country seems good. It's remote and far enough." The two left quietly. They walked into an alley and even changed their outfits. Tsunade became Uncle Tsunade, and Shizune became Mother Shizune. The piglet and Dolphin in her hands were wrapped in her arms as if they were holding a baby. They slipped away. Chapter 156. While the fight was in full swing here, Tsunade slipped away. I wonder how Naruto would feel if he knew. But here, Naruto went overboard again. Yakushi Kabuto ran away. Naruto stood in the ruins that were no weaker than Toad and Orochi's, and said foolishly, "By the way, where is Yakushi Kabuto?" Ninetales complained, "He ran away a long time ago." Naruto was surprised when he heard Ninetales' voice. "Nine Llamas, Sensei, you finally spoke. Weren't you afraid that Jiraiya would find out and cut off the spiritual link?" Ninetales replied, "I didn't cut it off, I just changed it to one way. Seeing you go crazy, I couldn't help but complain." In fact, the current Ninetales gave Naruto a good feeling. He was very kind, like a real teacher. But Naruto still didn't dare to gamble. If he really got the key, what would happen after opening it? Would he really get the power of Ninetales, and the two of them would work together to die, or would they see each other? And, even if the Ninetales in his body was on his side, what about the other Ninetales? The one sealed in Shinigami's stomach didn't know who Naruto was. At that time, Naruto didn't think that he could use a cake to exchange for a coolie. Because this matter was nonsense, Naruto decided to take the initiative in his own hands. First, he could fuse with Mokutan to protect himself in front of Nine Tails. Then he would love Nine Tails like an older brother, and he would never bully Nine Tails with his own strength. Naruto guaranteed with his own personality. Well, Sasuke probably wouldn't believe this guarantee, because compared to Naruto's personality, he believed that Naruto would guarantee with Hinata. Naruto's personality. Sasuke smiled and didn't speak. Nine Lamas, Sensei, what do you think of my idea, Rasengan with Taijutsu, does it have a kind of invincible spirit? Nine Tails surprisingly didn't continue to complain, but seriously suggested, Shikaku's secret technique and Taijutsu are more compatible. Truth. Naruto's eyes glanced at Jiraiya, but Jiraiya's back was facing him at this time, so he couldn't see him from this angle. Shikaku's secret technique. Storm attack. Then, facing the only wall that was still standing, he kicked out with his right leg. A wind blade slashed Naruto's arm. Blood overflowed from Naruto's arm. Under the centrifugal force, Naruto turned around and kicked out a lot of blood. But this blow was indeed strong. The wall was 2 meters high, half a meter thick, and 8 meters long. Naruto's kick swept away the wind blade, and the place he touched was directly swept away, leaving a half-meter thick hole. Unlike Rasengan's explosion, the wind blade's penetrating power was stronger. Sweeping the wall with his leg was as simple as cutting tofu with a knife. Nine-Tailed commented, "This move works the same way as the wind blades you condense on your blade. Whenever you can condense the wind blades, the power of this move can be maximized. Furthermore, you can continue to compress it after that. There's a lot of potential in this move." A lot of potential? Naruto blinked, looked at his trousers torn by the wind blade, and his leg with bloody holes, and complained, "Are you sure this move isn't suicide? Why do I feel that when I condensed the wind blade, my right leg was also cut off by the wind blade?" Nine Tails said seriously, "If it were someone else, I think the result would be like what you said, but you are different, your control of chakra has long surpassed ordinary people." Being praised was always something to be happy about, especially by an antique like Nine-Tailed. So Naruto happily included the topic of the fusion of Shikaku's secret arts and Taijutsu in the future training project. "By the way, Nine Lamas, Sensei, can you feel where the person who fought with me before is? I think he should be hiding in the ground." For Kabuto, Naruto didn't give up. Nine Tails replied, "Isn't he on top of the snake's head?" Naruto looked at the snake's head, but he couldn't see it. After all, Naruto's eyes have become sharper, but they can't see through things. So he joined with Orochimaru. This is difficult. Although Orochimaru's soul was sealed in the Shinigami's stomach by Sandaime Naruto, and now he can no longer use ninjutsu with his hands, but Naruto doesn't think that he will be Orochimaru's opponent. He still has self-awareness about this. Then the snake's head retreated a few meters, and Naruto saw Kabuto, but he didn't hear what he said. He only saw Kabuto's hand seals, and then with a bang, Kabuto, Orochimaru, and the two snakes disappeared in front of him. Fuck. Jiraiya is so useless? I don't even know when Orochimaru changed into a shadow clone jutsu? Nine Tails replied, "That's not a shadow clone jutsu." Naruto couldn't believe it. How can someone who isn't a shadow clone jutsu suddenly disappear? Nine Tails. Reverse summoning jutsu. Is there such a thing? In other words, summoning jutsu can summon people? It seems that it's possible. In the original world, Naruto went to Mount Mayaboku because of Toad summoning jutsu. Thinking of this, Naruto's eyes lit up, and he said to himself, "So, summoning jutsu can also sign a contract with people? Then if I sign a contract with Hinata, in the middle of the night, one person, one bed, plus summoning jutsu?" Naruto shook his head and stopped in time. If he continued to think about it, he was afraid that he would raise the flag, and then Nine Tails would feel the strangeness of his body. At that time, he would definitely be ridiculed. He had to think about serious things. If he signed a contract with Sasuke, He would suddenly summon Sasuke when fighting with the enemy, and then let Sasuke cover his retreat. This style is very normal. Summoning jutsu, interesting. After Orochimaru disappeared, Jiraiya dispelled summoning jutsu and came to Naruto's side. He looked at Naruto's very cold and tattered pants and asked, "Did you use that ninjutsu again?" Naruto shook his head again and said, No, it's too hot, so I added a few holes in my pants for ventilation." As he said that, a wind blade cut through his left pants, and it was also ruined into beggar pants. Jiraiya looked at Naruto with a look of contempt. How could someone with ice release Kekkai Genkai feel hot? Who would believe that? Naruto cleverly changed the topic and said, "This place is destroyed like this. Should we run away?" At first glance, one could tell that the buildings here were ancient buildings. But now, most of them had already been destroyed. Naruto felt that he couldn't afford to pay. Jiraiya shook his head and said, "This is because of Orochimaru, he should be the one paying, why should we run?" Naruto, this sentence is so reasonable. Naruto felt that he was speechless. But he couldn't help but think of the education of his elementary school teacher. Every fight was a matter between two people, because it takes two to clap, and so on. Orochimaru also appeared in Bunker Street. It seems that the information you collected is true, Naruto. Tsunade is indeed here. Naruto naturally understood the reason, but he still pretended to be confused and asked, "What's the relationship between the two?" Jiraiya explained, "When I fought with Orochimaru, his hands were hanging down, and he didn't use ninjutsu, and the skin of his hands was reddish-brown with burn marks. I guess he was injured by Sandame Naruto-sama." Speaking of Sandame Naruto, Jiraiya's mood was a little depressed. Naruto suddenly realized, so, Orochimaru also came to see Tsunade for treatment? Jiraiya nodded and sighed again. "Let's go to the surrounding casinos and taverns. If Tsunade is here, she can't leave these two places." Outside the Fire Country, two figures were sitting in a carriage, and they had already rushed to the Earth Country. Tsunade removed her disguise, took off her thick clothes, and pulled the clothes on her body to fan herself. Phew. I suddenly feel much more relaxed after leaving the Fire Country. Tough, who was in Shizen's arms, looked at Tsunade's clothes with Doudou's eyes. The piglet's saliva flowed out. I don't know if it's too pure, or too evil. Chapter 157. Tsunade was no longer in Bunker Street, and it was impossible to find her here. Jiraiya searched all the casinos and pubs, and finally, he had no choice but to use perception ninjutsu to scan the Land of Fire. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. "The news is true, but Tsunade is not here, why?" Jiraiya replied, "Maybe she left." The two were silent, and this conversation was a bit of nonsense. Sasuke's hand. I don't know if she can wait until then. Thinking of Sasuke, Naruto, who was holding the map, frowned and asked, "Where would she go?" Jiraiya touched his chin and looked around. "I'm not very good at tracking by smell. If there is a dog with a sensitive nose, it would be good." A dog with a sensitive nose? Naruto thought of Kakashi, not that Kakashi is a dog, but Kakashi has a group of ninja dogs that are good at tracking. He also thought of Tooth Inuzuka and Akamaru. Well, these two guys have sensitive noses. While Jiraiya's eyes wandered around the street, Naruto locked on a few stray dogs that were rummaging through the garbage on the next street. Seeing the dogs, he said to Jiraiya, "My clone saw a few dogs over there. Even if they are not ninja dogs, it shouldn't be difficult to track their scent." The two crossed the street and found the dogs rummaging through the garbage. Jiraiya walked in front of the dog and gave it something to eat. Then he took out a small plastic bag from his clothes, and a few strands of beige hair were sealed in the plastic bag. Naruto stared at the beige hair and asked, "Hey, this is Tsunade's hair, right? Even her hair is preserved, and you say you have no interest in Tsunade?" Jiraiya didn't admit it. The hair is just to find her again in the future. Naruto looked at Jiraiya, whose ears were already red, and smiled mischievously, making Jiraiya feel even more uncomfortable. He hurriedly urged the dog to search for the scent. However, the dog ran and took the two back to the ruins. Woof, woof. Naruto sighed. It seems that Tsunade-sama has also visited this ancient city. Jiraiya squatted at the place where the dog was circling and raised his hand to pick up a strand of hair. Then, he urged the dog again. Then, the dog led the two of them through an alley and arrived outside a public toilet. Naruto stood outside the toilet and said in a very gentlemanly manner, "Well, I won't go in. You guys go in and look for it." Jiraiya didn't know what nerve he touched, but he said reflexively, "How can I go into the ladies' room?" Naruto thought of something interesting, and a wicked smile appeared on his face. Jiraiya continued to urge the dog, but the dog stopped moving and kept barking in place. After some more urging, the dog ran out of the ancient city. It was still the same position. Jiraiya squatted down at the place where the dog was spinning again and said, "The smell should be gone," he muttered to himself. "I don't seem to have entered the ancient city. Why? And this place?" Jiraiya squatted down and looked around. A wall blocked his view. A guess flashed in Jiraiya's heart. Then, he thought of the smell. He got the answer, "Tsunade might have seen me and Orochimaru, and then, left." Naruto complained. "If that's the truth, then it's really heartbreaking. You're not welcome here. Then, how should we find her? If Tsunade is deliberately avoiding you, then she might not be the big fat sheep that the casino knows." Jiraiya naturally knew this, so he also had a difficult expression. If he couldn't find Tsunade, then he would have to become the 5th generation Naruto. Every day, he would have to face the heavy burden of public property, he would have to wake up earlier than the chicken, sleep later than the dog, and get involved in the troublesome family disputes. There were a lot of troublesome things, but none of them were what he wanted. He had a greater mission to do. He had to diligently collect materials to write better works. That was the most important thing. Just when Naruto and Jiraiya were squatting in the corner of Bunshu Street and worrying, in the dark underground base, painful roars could be heard. Every roar took a life. Orochimaru's hands were no longer burned dark red, but began to blacken and fester. "Sarutobi, you damn guy! What the hell did you do to my hands?" Orochimaru sat on the bed and stared at his charred and rotten hands. The blood vessels in his dark golden snake-like vertical pupils jumped, and his pupils contracted as if the door to the netherworld was slowly opening and closing. Beside his bed, there were 3 people's corpses lying in a mess. Blood flowed into the cracks in the floor, and then crawled along the cracks like ghosts trying to crawl out of hell. Yakushi stood at the door and looked down at the bloodstains on the ground. At this time, his hands were in plaster and hung in front of his chest. It turned out that Yakushi wasn't omnipotent. After Naruto's Rasengan, his arms went on strike. Comminuted fractures, the big fragments were the size of a nail, and the small fragments were almost ground to powder. For this, Yakushi was thankful that his medical ninjutsu was really good, otherwise, if he really lost his hands, he would have to use his feet to make potions in the future. Looking up again at Orochimaru lying on the bed, the master and servant were in a state of crippled hands. It was really ironic. Orochimaru raised his head and looked at Yakushi. "Did you find that person's news?" Yakushi replied, "No, he should have left Bunshu Street." Orochimaru's face became more and more gloomy, and finally made up his mind, "Call those 4 people to see me. Also, start preparing for reincarnation." Yakushi's expression became serious. So urgent. Orochimaru trembled and raised his somewhat rotten and charred hands and said, "I can't wait any longer," Yakushi said with uncertainty, "but Sasuke hasn't accepted the curse seal yet." "In case," Orochimaru grinned, "since he is a member of that clan, I believe that he can still withstand that kind of curse seal." Yakushi turned and left, and when he returned, he brought 4 people with him. The 4 people walked into the room. Orochimaru said to Yakushi, "You go and prepare for reincarnation." Yakushi looked up at Orochimaru. "Is he sending me away?" But he didn't dare to have any objection, even if it was Orochimaru who was already like this. Yakushi turned and left, and closed the door. After the door closed, Orochimaru looked at the 4 people, and the 4 people understood at the same time, and a barrier opened, enveloping the room. Orochimaru said, "Take this to the land of fire and find the person who contacted you, and then that person will tell you how to enter the wood leaf. After entering the wood leaf, bring Sasuke back." A snake came out from under Orochimaru's bed and spat out a wooden card with a fierce white snake engraved on it. The 4 people took the wooden card and said in unison, "Yes." After the 4 people left, Orochimaru muttered to himself, "Danzo, Danzo. Naruto's position has been cleared for you, so in return, you have to release Sasuke." Chapter 158. The third day after Tsunade disappeared. When Jiraiya came back from collecting information, he saw Naruto wearing a weighted bodysuit and swinging a big hammer to exercise his body. Jiraiya saw Naruto's hard work. It can be said that he's a training madman who doesn't even forget to walk. Jiraiya couldn't help but ask, "Naruto, why are you in such a hurry to become stronger?" Naruto roared and hit the last hammer. At the same time, he lifted the chakra net that covered the ground. Without the protection of the chakra net, the ground was directly smashed by the hammer, creating a hole with a diameter of 5 meters. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. He stopped and leaned the hammer on the tree next to him and replied, "I don't know, I haven't thought about it yet." Jiraiya didn't believe it and asked, "How can you have so much motivation without a goal?" Naruto said, "Because it's too late to think about becoming stronger when you need strength. You don't know such a simple truth? You're one of the Sannin." Naruto's words were so reasonable that Jiraiya couldn't refute it. Then Naruto began to practice the fusion of Shikaku's secret jutsu and taijutsu. That is, he practiced taijutsu moves under the state of Shikaku's secret jutsu. Naruto's leg was cut open with a whip kick. Jiraiya looked at Naruto's bleeding body and couldn't help but stop. "Naruto, I'll teach you the standard wind release ninjutsu." Naruto stopped and reminded, "I don't want to be apprenticed." This sentence really pierced Jiraiya's heart, and he was so angry that he wanted to flip the table. But who told him to be so cheap? Holding back his anger, he nodded and said, "Well, I don't need to be apprenticed, just think of it as I lost to you in speed." Naruto sat down obediently. Jiraiya began to explain the theory of the standard safe version of wind release body flicker technique. After listening to the theory, Naruto interrupted, "This body flicker technique needs stable chakra transmission?" Jiraiya nodded. "Naturally, all ninjutsu needs stable control of chakra, otherwise it can't be used." "Bullshit," Naruto retorted with 2 words, giving an example, "My multiple Kage clone jutsu doesn't need it." Jiraiya rolled his eyes and said, "That's a forbidden jutsu developed by Naidame Hokage. It's more dangerous because there are no restrictions." Multiple shadow jutsu? Jiraiya jutsu didn't think so. He felt like it. He then asked, "Is there any wind evasion body flicker technique that doesn't require stable control?" Jiraiya shook his head. Naruto replied firmly, "Then I won't learn it." "Why?" "Because it can't be used together with Hashiman. Opening the first gate of Hashiman Tonku was fine, but the second gate chakra was in a state of rebellion, not to mention that Naruto was planning to open the third gate." Naruto's attitude was very firm, and Jiraiya was very annoyed. Jiraiya scolded, "Then you can't use your original body flicker technique." The body flicker technique is used to speed up for a short time, kill the enemy in one blow, or escape at a critical moment. Your body flicker technique will cause your whole body to bleed, and the smell of blood will expose your position. So whether it's a one-hit kill or escape, the effect will be greatly reduced. Naruto nodded, not stubbornly thinking that he was right like a child, but agreed, "What you said is very reasonable. Bleeding is indeed a big problem with this ninjutsu." Jiraiya thought that Naruto had figured it out, so he said happily, "Yes, you should learn my version of body flicker technique. Yours is completely evil. Maybe one day I can't control it well and cut your throat, and you'll die." Jiraiya looked at Naruto's crotch and said with a strange smile, "Then you'll become a eunuch." However, Naruto shook his head. "What I mean is, although I know this ninjutsu has flaws, I still insist on using it, because I will find a way to make up for this flaw." When Jiraiya heard that Naruto still didn't change his mind, his face turned black, and he sneered, "Do you think ninjutsu is so easy to improve? Every ninjutsu from formation to perfection is a long process. It takes at least 1 or 2 years, more than 10 years, and some even require generations of effort. Naruto shook his head again. Don't bother. I already have an idea of how to improve it. The guy I fought before called Kabuto Yakushi knew a medical ninjutsu called In Heal. It can instantly heal the injuries on the body. If I learn it, bleeding will be a piece of cake. Jiraiya was stunned. You learned that ninjutsu? Naruto shook his head. Jiraiya raised his eyebrows. Then he will teach you? Naruto shook his head again. Jiraiya rolled his eyes and said contemptuously, You can improve it a fart. After 9 tails, one more person learned to use the adjective fart. Naruto was ridiculed by Jiraiya, but he didn't show any shame. Instead, he calmly said, This is not a problem. When I become Tsunade's disciple, Tsunade-sama will definitely teach me. Jiraiya suspiciously said, Let's not talk about whether you can successfully become Tsunade's disciple. How do you know that Tsunade knows this ninjutsu? Naruto said, Because Tsunade is the strongest medical ninjutsu. This sentence is so reasonable that Jiraiya couldn't refute it. And he knows that Tsunade does know this ninjutsu. This is a pain in the ass. By the way, that ninjutsu seems to have side effects. What is it? Jiraiya couldn't remember, so he stopped thinking about it and began to envy. Tesuke, why can't I? If I can, then Naruto will probably ask me to be his disciple. That kind of scene. Just thinking about it is so beautiful. Asking someone to be his disciple is such a pain in the ass. But then again, why do I have to ask him to be his disciple? Jiraiya suddenly felt a pain in his liver. He made a 5-second decision in his heart. I won't ask him to be his disciple anymore. But I'm a little unwilling. So tangled. Jiraiya found that his kidney also began to hurt. In the end, he could only ridicule, then wait until you succeed in becoming Tsunade's disciple. Naruto replied confidently, Tsunade-sama will accept me. After saying that, he got up and was about to practice the ninjutsu again. Jiraiya was burning with anger and couldn't help but ridicule Naruto. Accept you? How? You didn't find her? How about we go back home now? Let's see if Tsunade will come back and take the initiative to accept you as her disciple? When he said taking the initiative to accept you as her disciple, Jiraiya felt a little wronged. However, it was impossible to go back to Woodleaf because Jiraiya really didn't want to be Naruto. He felt that he was still young and could still collect material for a few years. If he returned to the village now, his great dream would no longer be realized. His inspiration would be strangled by busy official business, and he wouldn't even be able to write a novel. Thinking of this, Jiraiya couldn't help but sigh. Sigh. Where did Tsunade go? As Naruto inferred, it was impossible to ask the casino for information about the legendary fat sheep. That guy suddenly changed his mind and stopped gambling. In the past, Jiraiya wouldn't have believed it, but today it was true. And the reason he changed his mind was to hide from him. Did Tsunade receive the news and know that he was looking for her to be Naruto? Impossible. This is the village's secret. Except for the village's top officials, he only showed off in front of Naruto. No. I must find Tsunade. Jiraiya's expression suddenly became serious, and he said to himself, if it doesn't work, I can only use that method. His voice was not low. Naruto, who was about to continue practicing his storm, turned his head and said, You still have a way? Then what are you waiting for? At this moment, a huge eagle suddenly descended from the sky. The eagle's neck was tied with a wood leaf forehead protector. This is the symbol of the wood leaf ninja beast. The eagle stopped in front of Jiraiya, and Jiraiya saw a message bucket on the eagle's huge claw. Taking it down, there was a small scroll inside. The scroll was unfolded. As he read the message on the scroll, Jiraiya's face flushed red as if he was holding back his anger. Something happened. Naruto, what's wrong? What happened? Jiraiya took a deep breath, and finally his anger turned into a sigh. Orochimaru took Sasuke away from the village. Naruto's eyelids twitched, and he said in surprise, Sasuke's hand injury hasn't healed yet. Now he's taken away. Will he be permanently disabled? Jiraiya looked at Naruto and rolled his eyes. The point now is that he's gone. It's not a matter of whether he's disabled or not, but his life is almost gone. Jiraiya felt that Naruto's focus was not the main point. But even after Jiraiya corrected him, Naruto still felt that the disability was the main point. Because he felt that Sasuke's body wouldn't be easily taken over by Orochimaru. At the same time, in Orochimaru's base, after Kabuto checked Sasuke's body, he reported to Orochimaru, "Sasuke's right hand is comminuted fracture, and due to improper treatment. I'm afraid it's a waste." Orochimaru couldn't believe his ears. The vessel he was looking after was actually disabled in one hand? Then what's the difference between changing the body and not changing it? Orochimaru endured the pain and anger, and said in a hoarse voice, "Can you see what injured it?" Kabuto looked at the cast on his hand and smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid it's Rasengan." Rasengan? Was it injured by Naruto? Orochimaru looked at Kabuto's hand and said, "Didn't you heal your own hand?" Kabuto hesitated for a moment and replied, "My hand can be saved because I'm a medical ninja, and I treated it in time." Orochimaru interrupted directly, "If you were to treat Sasuke's hand injury, how confident would you be?" Kabuto gritted his teeth. This was forcing a duck to a perch. Kabuto won. Chapter 159. Woodleaf Ninja Village. Danzo's house. The morning sun hasn't warmed the house yet, but two guests were already in the house. They were also two old friends and former teammates, Homura Mitokado and Koharu Koharu. 3 cups of hot tea slowly rose as the three sat on both sides of the square table. Time has left traces on the faces of the 3 people, but their backs are very straight, just like the pine trees around Woodleaf. The branches and leaves are deep green, but even if the wind and snow fall, it can't bend them. Perhaps this is the momentum of a leader, and also the state of mind. After Yuan Fei left, there's one less person who can talk among us old bones. Xiaochun lowered her head to look at the steam rising from the tea and said in a low voice. Danzo looked across at Koharu's face. Once upon a time, this face attracted countless people, but if she were to talk about it now, no one would believe her. Time is really ruthless and scary. He pursed his lips and said, "Sacrificing for the village is the glory of every Naruto, and Sarutobi did it." Mitokado Homura, who was standing next to Koharu, was silent. His eyes were calm and deep, like an ancient well with no bottom. He was a little lonely, as if he was not involved. But his hair was very hard. Even if he was over 60 years old, it was still standing up. He was a stubborn old man, and he didn't speak, so there was a reason why he didn't speak. Danzo's eyes noticed Homura Mitokado and glanced at him. Koharu raised her head and looked at Danzo and said, "I know you have always wanted to sit in that position, but now is not the right time." Danzo didn't speak. They were all old friends, and some words didn't need to be hidden, and some words didn't need to be said. The 3 of them have been together for too long, and they are too familiar with each other. Koharu continued, "Uchiha Sasuke was taken away by Orochimaru." Danzo's eyes were still calm, and he said lightly, "People of that clan have never been stable." It was an ambiguous answer, as if he didn't say anything, but also as if he said a lot. Koharu nodded and agreed. It's good that he left, but before Naruto's position is inherited, someone has to worry about the security of the village. Homura Mitokado, and I think you can continue to be in charge of the Umbu. After talking about business, the 2 got up and left. Just like when they came, their pace was steady, but they were in a hurry. It's also true that Konoha has a lot of things to do now. Danzo watched them leave, and looked at the 3 cups of tea, and muttered as if he was talking to himself, "This will be my Woodleaf." At the same time, in the dense forest outside of a small town in the Land of Fire, there was a loud bang. 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 The sound of the explosions did not stop. Many people in the village wanted to find's head. However, they all rolled up their sleeves and came back with their tails between their legs. The scene was simply too shocking. The huge hammer smashed into the ground as if it was smashing into the sky, bringing with it the sound of thunder. However, not everyone was afraid. For example, there was a middle-aged man with messy hair who looked like he hadn't woken up yet. His face was filled with hidden bitterness. Naruto. It's only 4:30, if you don't want to sleep, why don't you let others sleep? Naruto raised the hammer and smashed it on the ground with a terrifying momentum, and then, boom! The hammer bounced up, and with the reaction force rising from the ground, Naruto swung the hammer in a circle, twisted his waist, and used the force to hammer again. At the same time, he shouted, "Why sleep when you are alive?" Then the big hammer hit the ground with a loud boom. Jiraiya frowned, and his facial features were squeezed together. To be honest, he didn't understand what Naruto said. Then he saw the hammer hit the ground again, and at the same time he shouted again, "After death, you will sleep." The hammer hit the ground again with a loud boom. Jiraiya understood this time, rolled his eyes, turned his head to Naruto, and replied, "Nonsense." But after 2 steps, he tilted his head and pondered. He felt that this *T sounded very reasonable. Then he shook his head again. Nonsense, it's all nonsense. What followed was an hour-long thunderclap. After breakfast, Naruto and Jiraiya left. Jiraiya had been yawning because he didn't sleep well. Naruto elbowed Jiraiya and said, "Hey, yesterday you said that you would find Tsunade today, and today it's here. Where is Tsunade?" Jiraiya yawned and rolled his eyes. "What's the hurry? I'm taking you to find her." Then he frowned and looked at Naruto, who was on the same level as him, and couldn't help but say, "Aren't you tired?" At this time, Naruto's body was floating up and down. This was the effect of Naruto wrapping himself with the wind attribute chakra, and then blowing the wind down. This was a new cultivation project developed by Naruto. In order to better control the wind attribute chakra, Naruto replied, "It's tiring, but making money is also tiring. Can you not make money? What to eat if you don't make money? What to drink if you don't make money? What to show off if you don't make money?" As he said, a fly flew by. Naruto opened his mouth and blew out a cold breath. The fly's body froze and fell to the ground. Its wings rested on the stone. Obviously, even if the ice melted, it couldn't fly. Poor fly. Who did it provoke? Jiraiya was affected by the cold breath, and took the initiative to stay away from Naruto. But Naruto followed him like a shadow and floated towards him again. He was probably the only person in the world who could still feel the cold in the middle of summer. Thinking of this, Jiraiya sighed helplessly. "Naruto, stop your cultivation for a while. The place I'm taking you to is about to arrive. Before that, you need to disguise yourself." Naruto's body landed and asked, "How do I disguise myself?" Jiraiya instructed, "Don't show your real appearance, real voice, and real everything." Naruto guessed, "It sounds like you're taking me to an illegal underground organization?" Jiraiya's expression was serious. "It is indeed an underground organization, and the largest one in the world, but they are not illegal. On the contrary, they are legal? No. Let's put it this way. On the surface, they are illegal, but secretly they are legal because they are an underground organization supported by the 5 major countries." Naruto was stunned. It was the first time he heard of such a powerful organization. Puzzled, he asked, "What does this organization do?" Jiraiya replied, "They do everything. Their nature can be understood as mercenaries, intelligence gathering, stealing, trading human lives, trading goods, and so on. As long as you have money, you can achieve what you want. The only thing you can't do is assassinate the officials of the 5 major countries." Naruto, is this different from the ninja village? Wait, it seems different. Naruto suddenly understood something. The only thing that can't be assassinated is the officials of the 5 major countries. Then this organization is to protect the officials, or to protect the dignitaries who are not ninjas but have status. The meaning of its existence is to balance the ninja village. At this time, Jiraiya explained, the ninja village is on the surface, but this organization is in the dark, equivalent to the Umbu in Woodleaf. But there is a difference, because this organization does not belong to a single country. In fact, I think it is a bit early for you to come in contact with this organization. Now you may not understand the meaning of this organization's existence, So when we get to the place, no matter what you see, hear, or see, don't speak, just follow behind me. Don't understand? But I already understand. This organization is to maintain the physique of this world. Originally, Naruto couldn't figure out why in a world with ninjas have to listen to the orders of ordinary people, complete the tasks given by them, and receive commissions to live. Now it seems that this has long been a fixed physique. On the surface, the competition of the 5 major countries is the competition of the ninja village. The force is in the hands of the leader of the ninja village, Kage. The ninjas trained in the ninja village belong to the private forces of the major countries. They can assassinate important people and seize land. The underground organization is the public force of the dignitaries. It can't be used to seize land, but it can ensure their own safety. In short, it is to maintain the aristocratic class system. To prevent the people below from rebelling. One in the light, one in the dark, one in the chain, the balance of force. Naruto found that this world seems to be quite interesting. He doesn't know which genius came up with this physique. What is the name of the organization? Jiraiya replied, Underground Exchange. P.S. This world's physique is not the original work. It was created by Xiao Zhao himself in order to rationalize the ninja world, enrich the plot, and expand the world. P.S. I hope you will like it, and from this chapter, there will be a lot of original things, so I won't mention them one by one in the future. P.S. But if there is a disagreement, you can leave a message in the book review, not this chapter. This chapter says that Xiao Zhao has the energy to read it that day, and Tian won't read it for a long time, because it is troublesome. Chapter 160. Jiraiya and Naruto posted a mission to find Tsunade in the underground exchange. It was posted in the morning, and there was news in the afternoon. Tsunade was in the land of Earth. For this news, Jiraiya spent 500,000 Ryo. It's a B-level mission. On the carriage from the land of fire to the land of Earth, Naruto and Jiraiya removed their disguises. It's so easy to make money. On the carriage, Naruto held the scroll that recorded the clues of Tsunade and couldn't help but sigh. Jiraiya crossed his arms in front of his chest, leaned against the carriage, and replied, You have to have the ability to make money. It took less than a day to find the news of Tsunade, which shows how powerful the intelligence network of the underground exchange is. Then are they so capable that they can buy the news of Orochimaru? Naruto's question made Jiraiya stunned, and then laughed. Even if they can, it's useless. That guy has a lot of underground bases, and he always uses summoning jutsu to go back. No matter how powerful the intelligence network is, it can't do anything about space-time ninjutsu. Summoning jutsu? Naruto thought of the scene where Orochimaru suddenly disappeared on the short book street. Nine Tails said that it was reverse summoning jutsu. Jiraiya continued, Also, no matter what, Orochimaru is still a rebellious ninja. He is still very careful. Plus, he seems to have offended a very powerful organization recently, so he has become more careful. So, it's impossible to find him with this method I can think of. Then Jiraiya's mouth twitched, and he hesitated. Naruto, I know that you want to find Sasuke, and I know that you have been practicing hard every day for this, but you are not Orochimaru's opponent now. Naruto was stunned. Who said that he was going to find Sasuke? Although he was a little worried about whether Sasuke's hand would be disabled, he thought that since Orochimaru could transplant Shodai's cells to Danzo, it wouldn't be difficult to transplant an arm or something. Therefore, he wasn't too worried. Jiraiya continued to talk to himself. However, if you are willing to worship me as your teacher and use the power in your body, you still have hope to grow quickly. Naruto rolled his eyes. He also admired Jiraiya for being able to turn the topic back to apprenticeship. That was awesome. I remember you promised me not to mention the apprenticeship. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. Jiraiya replied, You promised me that you wouldn't use that terrible body flicker jutsu. Naruto played dumb. Did I promise you that? How come I don't remember? Jiraiya also pretended to be stupid and said, I don't remember promising you not to talk about apprenticeship. Well, After Sasuke, Naruto had nurtured another person who treated oaths like dirt. By the way, when I was in the snow country, I took a car, a train, and an airship. Why do we only have a carriage to go to the earth country? Have you been to the snow country? This matter had been bottled up in Naruto's heart for a long time. Could it be that the economic strength of the fire country was not comparable to a small country that was cold all year round? Jiraiya saw that Naruto didn't mention the matter of worshipping him as a sensei, but instead jumped to another topic. He rolled his eyes and said, "Yes, I have." Then he thought about it and said perfunctorily, "Maybe it's because the weather is too cold, the horses in the ordinary carriage will freeze to death. This seems to be a good explanation. Then why not use ninja beasts? Well, there are not many ninjas in the snow country." However, Naruto really sighed at the messy development of technology in this world. It can be said that there is almost no transportation between the 5 major countries. While Naruto was thinking, Jiraiya said, "The most important thing is that except for ninjas like us, ordinary people don't travel across borders. Almost every country is self-sufficient. And ninjas like us, travel is to perform tasks. We need to be hidden. It is impossible to make a big fuss." This answer is reliable. For the next 3 days, Jiraiya and Naruto spent their time on the road. Behind the two, in the vast Gobi Desert, Uchiha Itachi and Kisame were following. They have been following behind for some time, but they haven't found a good time to make a move. Kisame didn't like the bad weather of the Earth Country and complained, "How long do we have to chase?" Uchiha Itachi took out the map and glanced at it, then handed it to Kisame and said, "There is a small town ahead. If they stop, find the right time to make a move." Kisame looked at the small town marked on the map and frowned. "Do we have to fight?" Itachi said truthfully, "I'm afraid we are not their opponents." When Kisame heard this sentence, he wanted to say nonsense. He meant to ask what to do, but Itachi didn't speak again. Kisame shrugged and helplessly followed. He swore that this mission was the worst mission he had ever done. Looking up at the sky, the wind country, the earth country, and so on, it was either sand or plateau garbage countries. It was really bad. The most important thing was that in order to hide their tracks, they didn't even have a carriage. Ghost Mermaid silently made up his mind that once he caught that 9-tailed kid, he would definitely teach that kid a good lesson, who had been running around everywhere. How good would it be if he just stayed in one place and waited for him to catch him? At the same time, Sasuke, who was in Orochimaru's base, was also cursing Naruto. As for why he cursed Naruto, it was because the operation Kabuto performed on him was too painful. Kabuto comforted him, "Enduring pain is also a kind of training, and it is also an excellent spiritual training." As he said that, the bright scalpel dissected Sasuke's hand. While dissecting, he praised, "Your will is good. Most of the other people I dissected fainted because of the great pain. But it's also your bad luck. If you use chakra scalpel, the pain of dissection will be less than 10 times, but, thanks to Naruto's blessing, my hands were just crippled by his Rasengan a few days ago, so neither the meridians nor the bones have grown well. So you can't use chakra scalpel now," as he said. He cut down again. Sasuke was sweating, and the pain made his Sharingan open subconsciously. But this made his sense of pain more sensitive. Kabuto glanced at Sasuke's Sharingan from the corner of his eye and said, "You must control yourself. If you use Genjutsu on me now to stop my operation, then your hand will not be as simple as not being able to use ninjutsu. I'm afraid it will be segmented." Sasuke turned his head to the side and didn't look at Kabuto. Kabuto nodded with satisfaction, and then continued to complain, "Under normal circumstances, you can also use psychic paralysis, so you can't feel the pain, but unfortunately, your Sharingan has physical resistance to psychic paralysis. After all, psychic paralysis is just a simple genjutsu." Sasuke suddenly wanted to strangle Kabuto. He didn't feel that this kind of nonsense could help him distract his attention, but he felt more pain. Kabuto continued, "There is also a kind of drug paralysis, but it doesn't have much effect on you if it is used less, and it will affect your brain development if it is used more. You are Orochimaru-sama's precious vessel, so the drug paralysis has nothing to do with you. I must kill Kabuto in the future." Sasuke made up his mind. However, Yakushi didn't stop talking, but there is also a way to transfer chakra into electrons to impact your nervous system. This method can make you feel no pain. I can also use it. But you still have to thank Naruto. I was almost killed by him in the second exam of Chunin's exam, so it's like I'm looking for some interest from you. With that, the katana cut open. At this point, Sasuke's right hand was completely dissected. Kabuto looked at Sasuke's crooked bones and sighed, "What a poor guy, the bones in your hand are going to be broken and regenerated. I hope your bones can be strong. I feel that it will take 7 or 8 times. Well, for the sake of Naruto's face, I'll round it up to 10 times. If you can get through it, I believe that this hand will be harder than all the bones in your body. By the way, do you know the story of the eagle? The eagle will break its bones in order to fly to a higher sky." Sasuke gritted his teeth and said, "I'll listen to your mother's slap." This sentence was learned from Naruto. Maybe it's because he learned it from Naruto. So Kabuto smiled and said, "Add 2 more times, break it 12 times. Chapter 161. Earth Town. A small town on the edge of the land of Earth. After Naruto got off the carriage, he looked at the yellow land. Or it could be said that there was no other color in this town except earth yellow. Naruto had seen the architectural style in the past. It was a cave dug directly from the soil. To be precise, it was a sunken cave. People walked on it and put it in the ground. The coachman of the carriage was an old man with bad ears. He shouted loudly while gesturing, "We are going down to let the horse rest. You should also rest by the way." Naruto nodded. After that, the old man skillfully pulled the carriage to an inn that was specially set up to receive people from the outside world. "Let's go on our own. I feel that the carriage is a bit slow," Naruto said to Jiraiya, but there was no response. When he turned his head, he found that Jiraiya was talking happily with a delicate girl. Is Jiraiya so popular with women? Naruto raised his eyebrows in surprise. Then Jiraiya seemed to have reached some kind of agreement with the woman. He threw a bunch of keys to Naruto and said, "I'm going to collect information. You rest here and wait for me to come back." "That girl is chicken." Naruto looked at the girl. She was a very beautiful girl. Her face was a little red, but it wasn't very heavy. Instead, it added a little bit of cuteness. "Gee, looks good girl. What a pity." After Jiraiya and the girl left, Naruto looked down at the keys in his hand. 404. Go to see the room? Naruto was a little curious about the cave hotel. Is 404 the 4th floor underground? Naruto thought maliciously. After all, the cave was built by digging down. But Naruto was wrong because the cave only had 2 floors. Walking into the cave, a familiar feeling always entangled in his heart. It's not the familiarity of the cave, but, when the door opened, Naruto saw the person in the room, he finally knew what was familiar. The man was wearing a black trench coat against the fire cloud. It was hard to not recognize this kind of symbol. It seems that the woman who lured Jiraiya away wasn't Chick, but the genjutsu of the man in front of him. So, the next step is to pretend to be good and wait for Jiraiya's rescue? This was a very wise choice. But Naruto suddenly wanted to test the gap between himself and a big shot like Itachi. Itachi said, "Naruto, come with us." Us? If there was only one person in front of him, then the other person was behind him? Naruto instantly activated Shikaku's secret technique, and wind blades covered his whole body. Naruto rushed to another corner of the room and looked at the door at the same time. There was indeed a man standing at the door, 2 heads taller than Itachi. Its skeleton was also very big, with broad shoulders and a saber hilt on its back. Persimmon Ghost Shark. Ghost Mermaid looked at Naruto, grinned to Itachi and said, "Itachi, if he runs around, he will bring us trouble." As he spoke, he raised his right hand to grab the hilt of the sword behind him and continued, "Cutting off one of his legs would be better." As Naruto rushed into the room, the second gate of Hashimoto Tonku was already opened. At this time, his right hand pressed on the storage tool on his left wrist, the curse was triggered, and the Azuchiha sword appeared in his hand. There was no hesitation, and no fear. He decided that he wanted to see how big the gap between his current strength and the two people in front of him was. Even if it was just a slash. The wind attribute chakra erupted, and Naruto slashed at the nearest Uchiha Itachi. Itachi dodged with body flicker technique. The visual enhancement of opening two gates of Hashimoto Tonku allowed Naruto to see the process of Itachi dodging, but his body couldn't keep up. It's over. But Naruto felt that he could still be saved. Chakra gathered in his left hand, and Rasengan instantly appeared in his hand. At this time, Rasengan was just a fake. After all, the complete version of Rasengan, from condensing chakra to release, takes at least 1 second. And that's when the Hashimoto chakra is active. But at this moment, in the blink of an eye, there was no time at all. Fortunately, Itachi didn't rush over in his vision. 1 second was up, and Naruto's right hand slashed through the wall. The wall was torn apart by the wind blade, and a 1 meter wide and 4 meter long hole was opened. Retreat. With just one slash, Naruto determined that he would not be the opponent of the person in front of him. This was a matter of course. Only he would be so bored that he would want to give it a try. Anyone with a normal brain would not do this. Naruto broke out chakra and decided to use body flicker technique to pass through the wall. But Kisame's figure blocked the opening. Kisame's body flicker technique was not much worse than Itachi's. This time it's really over. It turns out that you won't die if you don't seek death. Kisame's hand was on the hilt behind him, and it seemed that he was going to swing the shark muscle behind him. Will one of his legs be cut off in the next moment? Or cut in half from the stomach? But Kisame's brain shouldn't be working well. Although this hotel was really big, with a height of more than 2 meters, Kisame's height was already 2 meters. The shark muscle was a big sword. It was okay if it was cut horizontally, but cut vertically? It couldn't be used at all, okay? Under the Hashimoto dynamic vision, Naruto saw it clearly, and his brain was also thinking quickly, but most of it was useless ridicule. Kisame held the hilt, and with a shake of his hand, the shark muscle separated from the back of the sword, and then cut vertically. There was also a stupid man on the bed. But Naruto was a little disappointed, because it was not Jiraiya. Naruto pushed body flicker technique to the extreme, and jumped to the upper floor at the moment when Kisame cut the ceiling. So after he reached the upper floor, he looked down at the man and woman and the bed falling down. Body flicker technique hit the wall, there was no move, the Rasengan in his hand was not used, but he kept holding it in his hand. The wind blade on Naruto's body smashed the wall. Breaking a 5-meter thick wall with one head, the feeling was sour. At the moment of rushing outside, Naruto praised himself for choosing to continue to use this body flicker technique. If he used Jiraiya's garbage body flicker technique, he would have fainted directly. Even if he used Rasengan, there would be a delay, 2 seconds. 2 seconds was not very long, but it was enough for him to die in the hands of Kisame and Uchiha Itachi. Naruto went out of the hotel, followed by Kisame and Uchiha Itachi. Naruto suddenly thought, why not use the feet to condense Rasengan? That way, he could hold the sword with both hands. Thinking of this, 2 Rasengan condensed on Naruto's feet, and at the same time, the Rasengan on his left hand dissipated. Naruto held the azure sleeve sword with both hands. He turned around and slashed at Uchiha Itachi, who dodged calmly. Finding the right angle, the azure sleeve sword's characteristics were stimulated, and the sword suddenly stretched 3 times. Unfortunately, it didn't stab anyone, only Uchiha Itachi's clothes. Naruto was a little disappointed. This trick only worked for the first time. Jiraiya, if you don't come, I'll die. I made such a big movement, why don't you come? Although it's only 2 seconds, if you don't come in the 3rd second, I'll die. In the sealed space of Nine Tails' hair stood up, urging, let me do it. Naruto replied, give me 2 more seconds. I decided to struggle. After 2 seconds, you send chakra to the door. Nine Tails was full of worry. I'm afraid you can't hold on for 2 seconds. Uchiha Itachi disappeared in front of Naruto with the body flicker technique. The speed was faster than before, but there were still some traces under the blessing of the two Hashiman Tonku. Behind. Naruto turned around with the Rasengan on the sole of his foot and gave a whip kick. Boom! There was a loud noise. The attack didn't hit Itachi, but the earth wall behind him was shattered by the Rasengan on Naruto's foot. As the smoke and dust filled the air, Naruto jumped up with the body flicker technique in his mouth. Hand seals, multiple shadow clone technique, mimic beast clone, white dove. Bang! Bang! Bang bang! 5,000 white doves were behind Naruto. Then they plunged down from all directions. The main body's left hand formed a fist, and the right hand formed a palm. Fist on palm, ice attribute chakra broke out. Ice release. 1,000 miles of ice. The cold spread out with Naruto as the center. The white doves turned into ice arrows and shot down. This trick was not used in the Chunin exam. This was the first battle of the ice release secret technique. The first second. Before the smoke and dust dissipated, Ghost Shark jumped up and flew 10 meters into the air. The shark muscle in his hand was released from the bandage and swept towards Naruto's white dove ice arrows. He shouted, "It's useless." Wherever the shark muscle passed, chakra on the white dove ice arrows was swallowed by the shark muscle and then disintegrated. But was it really useless? As the ice arrows were shattered, the cold accumulated. Naruto's eyes had seen Ghost Shark's body slow down, and the clothes on his body had already begun to freeze. And a white dove ice arrow was swept away by Ghost Shark, but a detonation talisman wrapped around the ice arrow shot out from the white dove's mouth before the white dove disappeared and then froze Ghost Shark's body. The second. In the sealed space of 9 tails, chakra of 9 tails surged out of the cage. Naruto made a hand seal. Explode. Mutual Explosion Talisman. This was also the first time he used the Mutual Explosion Talisman after learning it. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous and painful. Although he didn't bring many explosion talismans this time, he had 10 explosion talismans worth tens of thousands of taels. Mutual Explosion Talisman activated. An explosion talisman was stuck on Ghost Shark's body. The moment it detonated, all 30 low-level explosion talismans and 10 high-level explosion talismans on Naruto's body came out. Explosion. For a moment, a big sun lit up in the sky above Tuobao town. And Naruto, who used the Mutual Explosion Talisman in the sky, was also enveloped by the big sun. Was he courting death? Boom! The explosion swept out. Naruto's last thought was, "The gap is so big, but it feels so good." Chapter 162. The explosion made Naruto dizzy. With a burning pain on his body, Naruto received 9 tails chakra. He didn't know if it was in time, but the thrust generated by the explosion sent Naruto flying like a cannonball. 45 degrees diagonally upward, the ideal angle for a parabola. Whoosh! He flew into the sky, and then fell from a great distance. 9 tails chakra drew a diagonal line in the sky, like a dazzling meteor flashing in the sky. Boom! Naruto fell to the ground, his eyelids rolled, and he fainted. He didn't know anything. When he woke up again, he was in a carriage. The carriage's wheels rolled on the ground, and it was a little bumpy. Who told this carriage to not even have a shock absorption system? Naruto opened his eyes and took a look, and his heart skipped a beat. It was a white wave. Of course, although Naruto was shameless, he wasn't a pervert, so what shocked him wasn't the scenery in the deep V-neck dress, but the person's face. Beige hair, an oval face, and a purple diamond-shaped mark between her eyebrows. Is this Tsunade? Isn't this development too comedic? I fell from the sky and was picked up by Tsunade? I'm afraid I'm living in a dream. No, I must be dreaming. Thinking like this, a lazy voice sounded in his ear. It was the voice of an old man, and it was very familiar. Yo, Naruto, you finally woke up. Naruto looked at the voice. The guy with Akamaru's hair was none other than Jiraiya. Naruto looked at Jiraiya, then looked at Tsunade, and then turned his head to look up. A girl, because her chest was flat, Naruto's line of sight wasn't hindered at all, and he saw the person's face. Short black hair, a little sparse bangs, big eyes, and cute round eyes. Shizun? So I'm lying on Shizun's lap? Wow! The legendary lap pillow. So comfortable. There was also a hint of fragrance. It was the fragrance of dry clothes. There was also a hint of other pleasant smells. Naruto smelled it. It was the smell of herbs. It was not just one kind, but a mixture of many kinds. Why, you also had this smell. How long have I been unconscious? Naruto asked. Mute Sound replied, exactly 7 days. 7 days. Naruto seemed to be able to guess what was going on. After he fell into a coma, Jiraiya found him and took him on the road to find Tsunade. Then he convinced Tsunade to return to the village. Is it comfortable? Jiraiya raised his eyebrows and asked. Naruto had no intention of getting up. He said, I think I've suffered internal injuries. I'll have to lie down for a few more days. Jiraiya's mouth twitched. To be honest, he was a little envious of Naruto. Then, he subconsciously looked at Tsunade, not knowing what unrealistic things she was thinking. Tsunade looked at Naruto with interest and asked directly, Did you cause that explosion? Explosion? Explosion. I don't know if Kisame is dead or not. Thinking about it, he shouldn't die so easily. Naruto felt his body's condition and tried to sit up. Shizun said very gently, Your injuries are very serious. You can lie down for a while. We'll reach the village soon. Then Naruto, who was about to sit up, shamelessly lay down again. Jiraiya raised his eyebrows. But he didn't say anything. Naruto's injuries were indeed serious. When he was first found, his body was wrapped in a layer of charcoal. He thought it was cooked, but later found that a new layer of skin grew inside. Therefore, Naruto's skin was much whiter than before. And his beard was also burned away. It hasn't grown out yet. And, there's something that Naruto himself hasn't noticed yet. Naruto's eyebrows and hair were also burned away. Now his head was bald. Naruto answered Tsunade's words while lying down. If Tsunade-sama is asking about the explosion in Tabashi town, it was indeed me. The situation was urgent at the time, and I didn't have time to think about it. Tsunade's tone became harsh and said to Naruto, Do you know how many people died in that explosion? How many people died in that explosion? 10,000 Rio detonation tags, 30 low-level ones. The explosion should be enough to wipe out the entire village. But, although Tsunade's tone was harsh, Naruto didn't feel real anger. And Jiraiya and Shizun's performance was also very calm. Is it numbness to death? Naruto didn't know Shizun's personality, but Naruto still knew Jiraiya's personality. If he really wiped out a town, Jiraiya wouldn't be like this. Then, the truth is that no one died. It should be that Jiraiya blocked the explosion at the critical moment. Naruto asked Tsunade, Did people really die? Tsunade was stunned. She didn't expect Naruto to ask her. When Naruto was unconscious, Tsunade heard from Jiraiya that Naruto wanted to worship her as a teacher, so she wanted to test Naruto's temperament. But she thought that Naruto would blame himself, and she also thought that he would ignore or shirk responsibility, but she didn't expect him to ask her. Did this little guy see through it? Tsunade looked at Jiraiya, who was still looking at Tsunade's thigh in a daze. As long as you see it, you can see a kind of emotion called yearning in his eyes. So in the next moment, Jiraiya was punched out of the carriage by Tsunade. Tsunade took a deep breath and turned to Naruto and asked, How did you see that no one died? Naruto looked at the hole in the roof of the carriage, swallowed, and obediently replied, Because Jiraiya-sama's expression was very relaxed. And although Tsunade-sama's tone was harsh, she wasn't really angry. Tsunade raised her eyebrows, thinking that her acting wasn't good enough. Then she said with a serious expression, Even if no one died, many people were deafened by the explosion. Naruto sat up and said seriously, That's a sad thing. But I think with Tsunade-sama's medical skills, they should be cured. Tsunade looked at Naruto strangely and said, You can see that? How can you tell? Naruto said seriously, "It's not that I can see it, because Tsunade-sama is the best medical ninja." When Tsunade heard this, she nodded with satisfaction. "Since you're so smart, I won't ask you for a service fee. You can follow me from now on." Jiraiya climbed into the carriage and disagreed. "This decision is too hasty. I don't think Naruto is suitable to be a medical ninja." Tsunade asked, "Do you mean that he is suitable to worship you as a teacher?" Jiraiya just nodded, and the next moment, Tsunade kicked Jiraiya away again. Tsunade sat down again and said domineeringly, "You dare to steal people from me? You are getting bolder." Naruto took a deep breath. Although he was mentally prepared, this sensei was more violent than he thought. So, is it a blessing or a curse to worship Tsunade as a teacher? Is it too late to regret? If I regret, I'm afraid I will fly away like Jiraiya. So, I should take advantage of the first meeting to flatter her. As soon as he thought of it, flattering Naruto was really easy. After all, Naruto's moral integrity was used as an insole. "Tsunade-sensei, I think calling you sensei makes you old. How about I call you sister in the future?" Puff. Shizen spat and then coughed. She was choked by her own saliva. However, Tsunade was very happy. She touched Naruto's head and said, "Okay, I like this name." Naruto was stunned. Because the feeling on his head. Why is it strange? It's bald. Naruto raised his hand mechanically and touched his head. He was extremely frightened. "Where is my hair?" Then he touched his face. "Where are my eyebrows?" Tsunade took a breath and patted Naruto's bald head and comforted. "It's okay. It will grow out soon. When we go back, sister will make a hair growth medicine for you. I guarantee that your hair will grow better than before." Chapter 163. Shizen said that they were almost at the village. However, they still haven't reached the village after another day of travel. How bad is their sense of time? At night, the four of them set up a campfire and camped under the starry sky. If you count the young man who drove the carriage, there should be 5 of them, but for some strange rule, the young man didn't want to get too close to the 4 of them and rested alone. Naruto guessed that he was afraid of being killed if he heard something he shouldn't. Naruto sat in front of the campfire and sat in a row with Shizen. The dancing campfire reflected on Naruto's shiny head, making Shizen look up from time to time. Naruto was very tired, and at the same time, he was under great pressure. Of course, what was even more stressful was that Jiraiya called Tsunade to the side and whispered something. The first thing was definitely not love words. Because the 2 of them looked back at Naruto from time to time. This made Naruto guess that the content of their conversation must be related to him. Therefore, Naruto was very worried. He couldn't open the 8 gates to enhance his hearing, because although there was nothing wrong with his body on the surface, his body hurt when he used chakra. Sigh. My lip reading is not good enough. I have to study it when I have the chance. After more than 10 minutes, Tsunade and Jiraiya seemed to have reached some kind of agreement, and the 2 of them finally walked back from the dark night in the distance. Tsunade looked serious and said, "Naruto, are you really going to worship me as your teacher?" Damn Jiraiya, he must have done something again. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya, turned to Tsunade and said seriously, "I have made up my mind." Tsunade nodded, then said to Jiraiya, "If you have something to say, say it tonight. After tonight, if Naruto doesn't change his mind, he will be my disciple in the future." Jiraiya stared at Naruto seriously and asked, "Naruto, when you were blown up by the explosion, you used another kind of chakra in your body, right?" Could Jiraiya feel it for a moment? Furthermore, it was at the moment when the detonation talisman exploded and a large amount of chakra surged. Naruto lamented Jiraiya's intuition towards chakra was as sharp as a dog's. Feigning ignorance, he said, "I don't know. I lost consciousness after the explosion." It was a fact that he was unconscious. After the explosion, Naruto's eyes were filled with flames. His consciousness sank into the sealed space of the 9 tails and received the 9 tails chakra. After that, there were almost no memories. He did not know how far he had been blasted away, nor did he know where he had been blasted to. His entire mind was in a state of chaos. That's right. There was also an intense burning sensation on his body. Naruto originally thought that it was the feeling of Nine Tails chakra wrapping around his body, but now he was sure that the real reason was that he was being roasted. His skin was carbonized, and Nine Tails chakra healed him. It could be said that he had really made a trip to the gates of hell. Jiraiya came to Naruto's side and pulled open Naruto's sleeve. The fire reflected a piece of skin that was whiter and smoother than a girl's. After all, it was newly grown and should be comparable to a baby's. Jiraiya pointed to Naruto's skin and said, "When I found you, the surface of your body was charred. It looked like a sweet potato in the fire." With that said, Jiraiya pulled the charcoal ash by the fire and pulled out a roasted sweet potato, then pointed to the charred surface of the roasted sweet potato with sparks and smoke, and said, "That's what it looks like." Naruto's eyes had turned into beady eyes. He glanced sideways at the sweet potato, and he didn't know whether to curse or not in his heart. "My heart is pricked," Jiraiya continued. "At that time, I thought you were dead. When I was about to collect your body, I accidentally broke the surface of your body. Your skin is like this." Jiraiya peeled off the roasted sweet potato skin, revealing the tender, and sweet potato meat inside. "New skin is showing." Naruto's mouth twitched. He interrupted, "Just say what you want to say. Your metaphor is not vivid at all. If I could beat you, you would have flown away by now. Fucking roasted sweet potato." Naruto decided that when Jiraiya finished talking, he must eat too to relieve the hatred in his heart. Jiraiya said seriously, "What I mean is, if it wasn't for the chakra in your body, you would have died by now." Naruto nodded, and Jiraiya stared and said, "This is the power that saved your life. You shouldn't hate it. You should accept it and let it turn into your power. There is no good or bad power in itself. It only depends on the person who uses it. Besides, don't you want to save Sasuke? If you can accept this power, I will teach you how to use it, and then you will be able to achieve what you want." Jiraiya said seriously, "If you want to save Sasuke, you must defeat Orochimaru. Orochimaru's strength is far beyond your imagination. You know that he killed Sandame Naruto, but you don't know that before he killed Sandame Naruto, he also killed Sannin's fourth Kozakage, and then pretended to be the fourth Kozakage to come to Woodleaf." Naruto looked at the fire, and the dancing flames reflected in Naruto's eyes seemed to ignite some emotions. The fire of revenge? But in fact, Naruto's heart was aching. His obsession with Jiraiya was a pain in the ass. Of course, he knew how strong Orochimaru was. If he didn't know, he wouldn't have kicked Orochimaru out in the first exam. It's just that the idiot Sandame organized a revival tournament, and if he wasn't smart enough, he would have been tortured by Orochimaru. Naruto didn't speak, and the way he looked at the fire had another layer of meaning in Jiraiya's eyes. He thought that Naruto was moved. Then he continued, "Also, Orochimaru isn't the only danger you are in. After Orochimaru betrayed the village, I have been tracking him and investigating him. During this period, he joined a mercenary group called Akatsuki. The two people you met were members of Akatsuki. I don't know what they want to do, but I'm sure that the power in your body has been targeted by them. You can be considered to have fought with them. That explosion should have been enough to deal with them, but what I want to tell you is that the two of them are completely fine." The more Jiraiya said, the more excited he became. Naruto looked at the fire. He sighed in his heart. Although Jiraiya wrote unsightly novels, his words were still very good. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been moved. But he had his own plan. His plan was thousands of times safer than Jiraiya's, so he wouldn't consider Jiraiya's plan at all. "Are you done?" Naruto didn't look at Jiraiya, because he was afraid that his eyes would reveal emotions that shouldn't be revealed. "If you're done, then I'll say a few more words. Even if the power of Nine Tails is strong, it's still the power of Nine Tails. And what I want is real strength, and what I want is my own power. I'm very grateful for your care. After my parents died, the village didn't take care of me much. Even if there was, it was sympathy for orphans. And you made me feel a deeper, family-like care. I can feel the emotion of wanting to protect me from the bottom of your heart, but I have my own will, just like a child who grows up to learn to walk by himself, so I hope you can respect my choice, support me silently, and believe in me. I don't want to refuse you anymore, so this is the last time. I will worship Tsunade as my teacher and learn what I want to learn. After Naruto finished, Jiraiya froze in place. At this moment Tsunade shouted, "Good. You have courage. From today on, sister will cover you." Naruto raised his head and begged, "Tsunade-san, you must help me save my hair." Shizun spat. The originally serious atmosphere was instantly changed by Naruto's last sentence. Chapter 164. That night, Naruto tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. He was afraid that Jiraiya would carry him and run away after he fell asleep. This kind of thing shouldn't happen, but Naruto was still worried. Finally, he couldn't help but get up and go out of the tent. When the curtain was lifted, the moonlight was bright, and Jiraiya was sitting outside his tent. Why didn't Jiraiya go back to his tent to sleep? What was he doing sitting outside his tent? Was he really going to kidnap him? God damn it! He's not that crazy, right? Jiraiya heard a sound behind him, looked back at Naruto and said, "Huh? Why are you up?" Naruto's face was dark, and he resisted the urge to run away and replied, "I'm going to the toilet." "Really? Fake." After Naruto walked into the forest, he instantly used multiple shadow clone jutsu, advanced camouflage, the kind that the clone wore clothes. Then he established a spiritual link with the clone and let the clone return to his tent. Naruto's main body sneaked outside Tsunade's tent. The only person in the world who can stop Jiraiya now is Tsunade. Naruto was very clear about this. Naruto whispered outside Tsunade's tent, "Tsunade-san, are you sleeping?" Tsunade opened her eyes and replied, "What's wrong?" Naruto whispered, "Tsunade-san, keep your voice down. I'm telling you, Jiraiya-sama is sitting outside my tent at night. I'm afraid that he will kidnap me in the middle of the night." Inside the tent, Tsunade blinked, frowned, and stretched her head out of the tent. Looking outside Naruto's tent, she saw Jiraiya sitting there. His face immediately turned pitch black. The next moment, she appeared behind Jiraiya. Without asking, she raised her foot and used flying shot. Jiraiya reacted in time to protect his body with chakra, but he still flew straight into the sky like a ball, flying farther and farther away. In the end, he seemed to turn into a small star. "How dare you kidnap my people? You're courting death." Then, she turned her head toward the small monk Naruto, whose face was filled with admiration, and said, "Sleep with Big Sister tonight. I want to see if he can still kidnap you from my tent." Sleeping with Tsunade? What did that mean? Naruto felt that something was wrong with his head, and then he was carried back to the tent by Tsunade. How could he fall asleep like this? After entering the tent, Tsunade gave Naruto a piece of land. After that, Naruto couldn't hear what Tsunade said. He was like a frightened bird, lying there with a blank mind. Then, he naturally suffered from insomnia. What to do? Who am I? Where am I? What am I going to do? Oh right, I need to sleep. But what could he do if he couldn't sleep? There was a beautiful woman sleeping beside him. He couldn't let his thoughts wander in that direction. He had to divert his attention. What should I order then? Let's summarize the fight against Itachi and Ghost Mermaid. Well, his speed was too slow, his attack speed was too slow, and his escape speed was also too slow. Effective attack. If, as Jiraiya said, Itachi and Ghost Mermaid were not injured in the final explosion, then there was no effective attack at all. His only achievement was that he used the Azure Sleeve Sword to cut Itachi's clothes. This didn't seem to be something to be proud of. There was also the lack of consideration in using the Mutual Explosive Talisman at the end. He had actually blown himself away. By the way, he had to thank the two Hashimon Tonku for strengthening his vision. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to struggle for more than 5 seconds. Naruto thought about it. He knew a lot of things now. They were systematic enough, but not extreme enough. Extreme speed state. Hashimon Tonku plus storm damage. The speed explosion was indeed strong, but it was not as strong as Itachi and Kisame, and there were side effects. Thinking about how he won against Jiraiya, it should be mainly because of the terrain. Because Hashimon Tonku enhanced his vision and allowed him to shuttle through the forest, and maybe Jiraiya didn't use his full strength. Extreme attack state. Hashimon Tonku plus storm damage combined with Azure Sleeve Sword plus Wind Blade. Hashimon Tonku plus storm damage high explosive speed. Azure Sleeve Sword plus Wind Blade had many advantages. Strong attack power, strong penetrating power, long endurance, continuous output. Without opening the Hashimon Tonku, Naruto could already achieve a single slash. Opening the first gate, the Wind Blade was slightly scattered, but because of the high output, the attack power was stronger than opening the first gate. Opening the second gate, the same principle, was more difficult to control. At the same time, because of the surge in output, the attack power was considerable. If he wanted to improve, he had to use Wind Blade in the state of opening the Hashimon Tonku. But that chakra's control was abnormal. As for Rasengan, it was an explosion damage, slow to form, not suitable for a burst attack. In other words, its speed was far less than Azure Sleeve Sword plus Wind Blade. Azure Sleeve Sword plus Wind Blade couldn't hit Itachi, so Rasengan was out of the question. As for improvement, with Naruto's mastery of Wind Release, it was enough to fuse Wind Release Shuriken with Rasengan. But that kind of ninjutsu that could be used once was not as cost-effective as Azure Sleeve Sword. Mutual explosive tag. Logically, as long as there were enough explosive tags, the damage would be great enough, but, burning money. Thinking of the 10 explosive tags, 100,000 taels were gone in an instant. Thinking about it made his heart ache. What other abilities did he have? Multiple shadow clone? This can increase the probability of survival with spiritual link. Suitable for layout and escape. Ice release secret technique. 1,000 miles of ice, mainly control the temperature. Combined with water flow, or second kick, the rain technique was very strong. But speed was completely useless in a battle. Naruto, are you asleep? Just after Naruto had successfully diverted his attention, Tsunade's words once again pulled Naruto back to reality. Back to the tent of a man and a woman alone. Naruto only had one sentence in his heart, retard, don't really treat me like a child. My soul can't stand the test. Opening his eyes, looking at the ceiling, he weakly replied, I'm not asleep. Hearing Naruto's answer, Tsunade turned sideways and said, then I'll tell you what a medical ninja is. As my disciple, you have to remember 3 rules. 3 rules? I seem to have some impression. I can't remember clearly. What 3 rules? Tsunade's hand came out of the summer-cold quilt and raised a finger. The first rule, medical ninja must not give up treatment before the death of his teammates. She raised 2 fingers. The second rule, medical ninja must not be at the forefront. She raised a 3rd finger. The third rule, medical ninja must be the last to die in the team. Oh. These 3 rules, I have an impression. If I remember correctly, there is a 4th rule. A ninja who has mastered the creation of ninjutsu to the extreme can break this rule. But Naruto waited for a long time, and Tsunade didn't say the 4th rule. She should wait until the day Naruto learned it. Naruto nodded, don't worry, even if everyone dies, I will be strong enough to survive. Tsunade was stunned. Although her 3 rules summed up like this, it felt weird to hear it from Naruto's mouth. At this moment, Naruto's expression suddenly became weird. Tsunade-ne-san, Jiraiya-sama ran away with the clone I left in the tent. Do you think we should tell him that it's fake and call him back? Chapter 165. The second Tion lit up, and the carriage started running again. Naruto and Shizune sat together, and Tsunade rubbed Dolphin's head. Jiraiya was gagged, tied with a hemp rope, and thrown at the feet of the 3. Woo! Woo! Jiraiya's mouth was gagged, and he couldn't speak. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya with panda eyes and then ignored him. Leaning against the carriage, he began to catch up on sleep. Last night, after Jiraiya rolled up Naruto's clone with a quilt and escaped, Naruto dispelled the clone according to Tsunade's instructions. Jiraiya found out that he was fooled, so he ran back and planned to tie him again. Then, Jiraiya was tied up. Then Naruto could finally go back to his tent to sleep. But maybe because of the shadow in his heart, he couldn't sleep all night. He opened his mouth and yawned. Naruto was sleepy. As he was getting sleepy, Jiraiya twisted and kicked him. So Naruto woke up. Woo, 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 woo. Jiraiya stared at him and said something he couldn't understand. Naruto was tired for a while. Replied, "Let me sleep for a while, I almost didn't sleep last night because of you." Then he closed his eyes. Naruto was a little sleepy, and when he was about to fall asleep, Jiraiya kicked him again. The blue veins on Naruto's forehead jumped. When he opened his eyes again, he found that Jiraiya's eyes were pleading. Naruto had a guess in his heart, and said to Shizune in a daze, "Shizune-san, Jiraiya-sama should be going to the toilet, take him out for a walk." "Walk? Do you think I'm a dog?" Jiraiya wanted to bite. On the other side, Shizune's face was red. He glared at Naruto. This was one of the Sannin. How could he say that? Shizune didn't know what happened last night. She only felt that Jiraiya was unlucky to meet Tsunade and Naruto. However, Naruto didn't even look at her. He was swaying back and forth with his eyes closed. It seemed that he was indeed very sleepy. He had no choice but to look at Tsunade for help. Tsunade chuckled and said to Shizune, "Just listen to Naruto and take Jiraiya out for a walk." Naruto didn't know what happened next. He fell asleep, and when Jing-in woke him up, the sun was already high in the sky. The four of them arrived at a small town. They stopped for lunch and continued on their way. In the carriage, Tsunade checked Naruto's body and praised, "Your recovery is very good. You will be able to use chakra again in one day." Naruto touched his bald head and asked worriedly, "What about the hair? Why do I feel that my hair hasn't grown at all?" Tsunade raised her hand and rubbed Naruto's head a few times. She patted it with satisfaction and said, "In fact, it's quite cute without long hair, just like the little monk in the fire temple." Naruto's face instantly turned black. Tsunade comforted him, "Don't worry, I will prepare a potion for you to promote hair growth when we go back. I guarantee that the potion will be very effective." By the way, potions are also a necessary knowledge for medical ninja. I have a plant dictionary here. You can just read it. Plant dictionary? Could it be the book that he had memorized before? Tsunade summoned a huge book from the storage scroll. Naruto looked inside the cover and knew that it was the one he read without opening it. He replied without interest, "I have read this book." Tsunade didn't know what Naruto meant by reading it. She thought that Naruto refused to learn it. She immediately showed her power. She said, "Medical ninjutsu based on chakra is not omnipotent. Many poisons can only be cured by understanding the toxicity and preparing the antidote, so the basic knowledge of herbs must be mastered." Then she gave the dictionary to Naruto. Naruto said innocently, "But I really finished reading it." Tsunade said angrily, "What do you mean finished reading it? You just memorized a few medicinal properties of plants and you finished reading it? It's not enough to just look at the pictures." After Naruto woke up, the rope on Jiraiya's body was untied. Seeing that Naruto didn't want to read the dictionary, he was overjoyed and said, "Naruto, if you want to be a medical ninja, you have to read a lot of boring things. But if you worship me as your master, you don't have to read those things." Tsunade stared at Jiraiya, and Jiraiya immediately shut up. Tsunade said word by word, "Last night is over. From now on, Naruto is my apprentice, even if he regrets it." Then she stuffed the dictionary into Naruto's hand again. This time, Naruto didn't push it back and read it honestly. But Naruto had long been accustomed to reading one page at a time like a scanner, so the dictionary was flipped. Tsunade was furious. "Read it carefully one by one." Naruto felt that this misunderstanding was too deep, and he should say something. So he handed the book to Tsunade. Tsunade-san, why don't you test me? In fact, I really finished reading it. I finished reading it all. I finished reading every word and every sentence. Finished reading every word and every sentence? Tsunade looked at the huge book in her hand. To be honest, she had planned to read this book once, but she vomited after reading 1/10 of it. So when she heard Naruto's words, her first feeling was disbelief. Naruto was bragging. Tell me the effect of shiitake butterfly. Shiitake butterfly? What a coincidence. The little mushroom that can run away is still planted in his flower pot. So Naruto answered fluently. Then the second type, the 10th type, the 100th type. He started to test randomly, then flipped through the dictionary to test, and then randomly selected the dictionary pages to test. None of them were wrong. Tsunade and Shizune looked at Naruto in horror. Jiraiya didn't feel any admiration or fear, only resentful dead fish eyes. After proving that he had sufficient plant knowledge, Tsunade tested the configuration rules of pharmacology. This time, Naruto once again showed amazing wisdom in making drugs. The effect of his little golden pill prescription and fart candy made Tsunade Shizune stunned. But Shizune didn't quite believe in the efficacy of fart candy. She questioned, "You said that the fart candy you made was extracted from shiitake butterfly? Shiitake butterfly only has a drowsy effect? And you're wrong to say that shiitake butterfly can walk. Although the dictionary records that it can walk, it's a wrong record." Shizune hesitated. "Naruto, you're not talking nonsense, are you? Medical ninja can't talk nonsense. Who said that shiitake butterfly can't walk? Not only can it walk, but it can also run. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tied the little mushroom's legs and planted it in the flower pot." But Naruto didn't intend to argue with Shizune. He intended to prove it with facts. So he took out a strawberry-flavored fart candy wrapped in a red candy paper and gave it to Shizune. Shizune took the candy and said, "Are you bribing me with candy?" "Well, only this time. In the future, you can't say any prescription that hasn't been verified by yourself. It'll be very embarrassing." Naruto nodded obediently. Then he watched Shizune eat the candy. The effect was fast. 30 seconds later. Puff. It was a very faint sound. Naruto saw Shizune blushing from the corner of his eye, but he didn't say anything and pretended that nothing had happened. Then 5 seconds later. Puff puff. There was a pause in the sound, obviously holding back for a while, but he couldn't hold it back and dragged it out. But the sound wasn't loud. Shizune pretended that the fart wasn't from the sample paper. Naruto looked at the roof and pretended that he didn't know what happened. Then he heard Jiraiya muttering, "Just talking about strawberries, why do I smell strawberries? Do I want to eat strawberries?" Then, puff, puff, puff. There was a pause, and then a long sound. This sound wasn't small, and Tsunade and Jiraiya both looked at Shizune. Shizune's face was red. But perhaps because of nervousness, she didn't connect the dots until another fart, and couldn't help but fart 2 more. Her face was red, and she could smell the strawberries herself. She shouted at Naruto, "Naruto!" Naruto's face was also a little red at this time, but it wasn't because of shyness, but because he was holding his breath. He stretched his head out of the window and made a crazy sneer. "Aha! Ha ha! Ha ha!" Chapter 166. There's a saying that's right. It feels good to die, but in the blink of an eye, you'll be cremated. After Naruto gave Shizune a fart candy, Shizune gave Naruto a medical ninjutsu. What's that? It's a medical ninjutsu that uses chakra to generate an electric field by converting chakra in the body into electrons and then entering the patient or enemy's body to disturb the nervous system. For the patient, it can have a nerve-paralyzing effect by blocking pain. For the enemy, it can disturb the nervous system and disrupt the coordination of the body. For example, you want to leave, but your fist is clenched. You want to punch, but your foot is raised. Naruto's current state is the latter. He wanted to laugh, but the feedback of his nerves was coughing so hard that his lungs were about to be coughed out. In the end, he wanted to pinch himself, but he raised his hand and slapped to the side. Of all things, this palm landed on Silent Echo's chest. Tsunade didn't stop him. She wasn't afraid of things getting out of hand. Oh. Jiraiya was led astray by Tsunade and subconsciously said, "Oh." Then the cute dolphin followed suit. "Oh. Oh." Shizen's eyes widened. Naruto was so desperate that he subconsciously retracted his hand, but his hand went forward instead. Although Shizen had almost no breasts, she was still a girl. After she reacted, she naturally gave Naruto a reverse grip and shoulder throw. Then, the newly repaired carriage was broken again with a bang. Naruto rolled on the ground and almost hit the ground face first. Fortunately, when he wanted to raise his head, his foot kicked downwards. Naruto's reaction force spiraled into the air, and then he fell on his butt. "Stand up?" "Sorry, I can't stand up." Naruto felt that he couldn't control his body at all. Because he found that he couldn't figure out what the command was. When he wanted to raise his head for the second time, it was manually done. When he wanted to raise his head for the third time, his head hit the ground. Simply put, no matter what command he issued, his body would respond randomly. This was a pain in the ass. So Naruto lay on the ground obediently. When the carriage stopped, someone came to save him. Tsunade said to Shizen, "Quickly release the ninjutsu on Naruto's body." Naruto's body hasn't recovered yet. Although Shizen was unwilling, she couldn't disobey Tsunade's order. She roughly reorganized Naruto's nervous system. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and sincerely explained, "Sister Shizen, I really didn't do it on purpose. I didn't want to touch your chest. Besides, your chest isn't as big as Jiraiya's. There's nothing to touch." Tsunade spat. Jiraiya's face darkened, mute, had completely turned black. In the next moment, he used chaotic body rush. However, Naruto was prepared. Although his body had not fully recovered and could not use chakra, Naruto's physical strength was still extremely strong. Therefore, he nimbly dodged Silent Note's palm. He continued sincerely, "I really didn't do it on purpose." Shizen's left hand crossed in front of her body, revealing several hidden weapons with needles. Her right hand pulled an elastic string, and then, several flying needles fanned out to attack Naruto. Naruto's strength erupted again. Without opening the Hashimoto Tonku, Naruto's vision was no different from ordinary people. Therefore, it was impossible to capture the trajectory of the hidden weapons with the naked eye. However, Naruto could determine the path of the hidden weapons based on the direction of the needles in Shizen's hand. Once again, he nimbly dodged. 5 minutes later, Shizen saw that she couldn't do anything to Naruto and finally stopped. Tsunade mediated, "Okay, Naruto, hurry up and give the antidote to Shizen." Shizen's despairing fart sound effect didn't stop at this time, and the strawberry smell was getting stronger. Shizen also looked at Naruto. As a girl, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a place to bury herself. However, Naruto scratched his head and smiled, "There's no antidote." For a moment, Tsunade's eyes widened, and Shizen was on the verge of collapse again. Tsunade remedied, "Then the drug's effect should be over soon, right?" Naruto blinked and whispered, "The drug's effect isn't long, it's only for 24 hours. His voice was getting smaller and smaller because he saw that Shizen couldn't help but go berserk again. Fortunately, Tsunade stopped Shizen in time to avoid a human tragedy. Then, she said to Naruto, "Then, that drug should still be available, right?" Naruto's drug was too harmful. He couldn't let a girl fart for 24 hours straight. Even if it didn't stink, she would want to die. So, he had to quickly prepare the antidote. Naruto's left hand touched the storage tool on his right wrist, and then a candy appeared in Naruto's hand. "This durian-flavored one, do you want it?" Durian, Shizen's mouth twitched, and there was a trace of joy in her heart. Fortunately, Naruto didn't give her the durian-flavored one, or she would have really committed suicide. Tsunade nodded. Naruto threw the candy over. As a result, he didn't know what was wrong with her head, but she jumped up and swallowed the candy in one bite. She wanted to play. Bang. Pigs can't hold back their farts. Therefore, this fart was strangely loud, and it was accompanied by the smell of durian. Bang! Bang! After the single sound, it was replaced by a double sound. The sound of the fart was hearty, the kind that was emitting yellow smoke. The yellow smoke spread to the horse's nose, and the horse followed it. Naruto was much more alert, and the moment he saw the yellow smoke, he subconsciously held his breath. In addition, the wind was blowing in front of Naruto, so he escaped a disaster. Jiraiya wasn't so lucky. He didn't know if it was out of curiosity, but he smelled it and then pinched his nose. But it didn't matter if he pinched his nose or not, the important thing was that he smelled it, so a trio sounded. No, a quartet, and the coachman of the carriage. The only survivors, Tsunade and Naruto, jumped to the tree and said in horror, "Is your fart candy contagious?" Naruto carefully breathed and replied, "Maybe the durian flavor is a special effect candy, and the catalytic gas produced a little more ingredients." Tsunade nodded and felt that it should be the case. Puff. Huh? What's that sound? Naruto looked at Tsunade and asked, "Sister Tsunade, did you fart just now?" Tsunade blushed. "I didn't." However, the second sound was heard. "It's over. Tsunade is also poisoned." Naruto ran away. Tsunade stood in the tree for a long time and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Naruto, come back here. I want to clean up the house." Naruto didn't dare to stop and ran quickly without looking back. He muttered, it's over, I also offended Sister Tsunade. I feel that this wood leaf can't go back, it's better to betray the village." But even if Naruto can use chakra, he's not necessarily faster than Tsunade. Now Naruto is still in the stage where he can't use chakra. Where can he run away? As soon as he ran out of 3 trees, he was caught by Tsunade. Then she hung Naruto upside down by his feet and held Naruto in her hand. Naruto's eyes were watery, and he begged for mercy with a pitiful face. "Sister Tsunade, I was wrong, please forgive me this time." Tsunade smiled coldly, "Since I'm also poisoned, you can't run away," she said, and lifted Naruto behind Tuntun's butt. Naruto held his breath, but how long can he hold it? In the end, he still breathed. He breathed when Tuntun didn't fart, but he didn't know that Tuntun was also waiting for him. Bang! With a loud sound, Naruto was sprayed yellow. The stench was so strong that he almost foamed at the mouth. 30 seconds later, Naruto couldn't help but start to fart. Boo! Tuntun was satisfied and cooperated. Bang! Tsunade, pft, Shizen, pft, pft. Jiraiya, bang, horse, bang, bang, bang. The coachman lifted his butt, pft. Everyone got on the carriage, and a cloud of yellow smoke rolled over where the carriage passed. The weasel lying on the grass took a deep breath. Then, there was a loud bang. It collapsed into the rabbit's nest behind it. The rabbit fell down with white foam at the mouth. "Rabbit, this fart is poisonous." Chapter 167. On the rooftop of the Naruto building, Tsunade stood on top of the wood leaf building and looked down at the entire wood leaf. She sighed, "Wood leaf has changed a lot." Naruto and Jiraiya stood behind him, accompanied by 2 of Konoha's current managers, 2 of Konoha's elders, Udatane and Mitokado Hamura, and 2 ninjas on standby. Well, there was also Shizen, who was holding Tubule and staring at Naruto from time to time. Since the fart candy incident, Shizen's attitude towards Naruto had changed 180 degrees. The gentle and considerate sister who used to be Naruto's lap pillow was gone. Mitokado Hamura looked at Tsunade standing on the edge of the Naruto building and sighed, "I didn't expect you to be able to invite her." This sentence was obviously directed at Jiraiya. Jiraiya laughed and said proudly, "This is nothing. How could she refuse a handsome guy like me? Ahahaha." Koharu looked at Tsunade's back. She still wanted Jiraiya to be the 5th Naruto, but now that Tsunade was back, she could only support Tsunade according to her agreement with Jiraiya. Thinking of this, Koharu felt a little sad that Naruto's position couldn't be given away. "It seems, we have to invite all the famous people from all over the world to celebrate her becoming the 5th Naruto. Ganma, Aoba, let everyone know about this." Following this order, Ganma and Aoba, who had been standing on the side for a long time, replied in unison, "Yes. Please." What Koharu said was please, and Naruto heard it clearly. But whether it was the tone or the expression, it was more like another word, let. But he was too lazy to complain about this. Naruto touched his head. The wind on the Naruto building was not small, and it was cold on the top of his head, so his heart was a little cold. Tsunade said that she would concoct a potion for him when she returned to the village. She's been back for half an hour. In fact, Naruto could also try to make it himself, but after all, it was a big deal related to hair, so it was better to be cautious. Tsunade stood on the rooftop of the Naruto building for a while, and then there were various handover matters. Naruto was like a little tail, running around behind him. From time to time, he would help out, but Naruto's real intention here was not to express himself, but to medicine. Jiraiya looked at Naruto busying himself and couldn't help but ask, "Naruto, don't you usually store your sword? Why did you bring it outside today?" The main reason was that Jiraiya saw Naruto carrying a sword on his back and moving things back and forth. He felt that it was a hindrance. Naruto didn't even turn his head as he replied, "Naturally, it's easier to kill people outside." Jiraiya didn't understand and asked, "Kill who?" Naruto didn't reply but muttered in his heart, "Whoever dares to laugh at my hair, I'll cut them." As he said that, there was a cry of surprise behind him. "Ming! Naruto!" Naruto turned around with his eyes wide open. It was Sakura Haruno. That's not important. What's important is that Hinata is beside him. God damn it! Now the last person Naruto wanted to see was Hinata. Because he felt that he was too unlucky, so he immediately turned his head and lowered his voice. "Sorry, you've got the wrong person." But this trick obviously didn't work. Then the two of them surrounded him. Hinata's small hands continued to poke each other in front of his chest and praised, "Naruto's bald head is also quite handsome." Naruto felt like he was being healed. Sakura Haruno touched on his sore spot. "Naruto, how did you get your hair?" Naruto's mouth twitched, and he replied with a dark expression, "Don't worry about how it's gone, I just want to know how to make it grow back quickly." Then he changed the topic. "You're here for business, right? Don't worry about me, hurry up and do business." When it came to business, Sakura Haruno's expression suddenly became gloomy. She said with some tears in her eyes, "Naruto, Sasuke was taken away by Orochi." Thinking about it, the only thing that Sakura Haruno cared about was Sasuke's matter. Naruto nodded and replied, "I know about this." Sakura Haruno's eyes were filled with tears. "Then come with me to find Naruto, Sama, and ask her to find Sasuke." Naruto comforted her. The current Naruto hasn't officially taken office yet, and she already knows about this matter, so there's no need to find her. In addition, the newly appointed Naruto Sama is very busy now. Super busy, and she still has to make medicine for me. So there's no free time today. Sakura Haruno said, "Has Naruto Sama decided to find Sasuke?" Find him? How to find him? Even the most powerful underground exchange didn't know where Orochimaru was hiding. And even if they knew, who would go? Last time, Orochimaru escaped from Jiraiya. This time, will Tsunade and Jiraiya go together? I'm afraid that Orochimaru will disappear without a trace when he gets the news. Moreover, Tsunade will soon take over, and I haven't heard of Naruto going out to do missions. And most importantly, Sasuke is leveling up in Orochimaru's place. Why do you want to join in the fun? Isn't that just making trouble? Naruto organized his words and persuaded, "Sakura, don't worry, go back and wash your face and sleep. I'll tell you when there's news." As it turned out, Naruto never persuaded people. Sakura Haruno stared at Naruto and said, "Even you are perfunctory with me?" Also, it seems that Sakura has hit a wall many times. Naruto complained in his heart, but he tried to save her. It's not perfunctory, but some things can't be rushed. Even if you make a mess of yourself, things won't change. Sakura Haruno's face became cold, and she shouted, "Naruto, how can you be so cold-blooded? Sasuke is your teammate." "I'm cold-blooded." "Okay, Naruto was helpless, and he couldn't persuade Sakura Haruno. Naruto turned his gaze to Hinata and asked, "Are you also here because of this?" Hinata felt that the atmosphere wasn't right, and nodded with some fear. "What did Kakashi say?" Hinata pressed her fingers together. "Kakashi-sensei went to perform a mission." "What mission did Kakashi perform?" "Well, Sasuke wasn't there, and he wasn't there either. Only Hinata was left, and it wasn't as convenient as moving by herself." "Then you should go back and practice. Instead of wasting time on these meaningless things, it's better to improve your own strength." Hinata hesitated to answer, but Sakura Haruno grabbed Hinata's hand and walked towards Naruto's office. "Hinata, let's go, don't pay attention to this scum." "I'm a scum again." "Well, since your man dumped you, I won't argue with you." Naruto rolled his eyes and continued to walk into Naruto's office with a pile of documents. Jiraiya looked at Naruto's back and sighed. To be able to endure criticism and not get angry, Naruto has matured a lot. It's a pity that he's not my disciple. In Jiraiya's view, Naruto practiced hard every day in order to find Sasuke. He still remembered the expression on Naruto's face when he asked him if he could buy information about Orochimaru in the underground exchange. At the same time, in Orochimaru's secret base, the painful roar sounded like a curse from the abyss, making people's scalp tingle. Orochimaru stared at his hands. At this time, his hands were rotten to the point that the bones could be seen. The bones were dark, so it was very strange. "Sasuke, hasn't he been cured yet?" This sentence was asked with gritted teeth. Kabuto carefully replied, "The surgery is only half done, at least 9 more times, and that's under the condition that he can persist." "I'm afraid." Orochimaru's muscles trembled uncontrollably from the pain. He was almost unable to hold on. To be precise, this body couldn't hold on anymore. The ulceration in his arms was spreading to the rest of his body. Kabuto also saw it and proposed, "Orochimaru-sama, I have prepared several bodies for you, and if you need, I can even offer them." Orochimaru replied in a low voice, "It has to be Sasuke's body. I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Then there was an uncontrollable roar. Kabuto clenched his fists. But the situation is urgent. The technique Naruto Sandaime-sama cast on you, the strength of the curse is far beyond our imagination. If you don't reincarnate quickly, everything will be over." Orochimaru didn't reply. He was in so much pain that he couldn't speak. He really couldn't hold on. Kabuto made up his mind to arrange for reincarnation as soon as possible. If Orochimaru suddenly died now, everything would be over. "I'll select the elites you need for reincarnation. Please leave them to me." Orochimaru absolutely couldn't die. After leaving Orochimaru's ward, Kabuto walked all the way down to the prison at the bottom of the base. The young experimental subjects that Orochimaru had captured were all imprisoned here. The prison cell opened, and Kabuto's voice echoed in every cell. "All of you, listen to me. From now on, you will start killing each other until only one person is left. The last one who survives can leave this place." The seal on the iron door burned to ashes, and the people in the prison raised their heads one after another. The pairs of green eyes didn't look like they came from humans at all, but more like those of wild beasts, fiercer than wolves. Chapter 168. In Naruto's office, Naruto leaned against the wall with the documents in his arms. He planned to see how Tsunade would reply to the two girls. The result was beyond Naruto's expectations. Tsunade sat on Naruto's office chair, crossed her legs, and held her cheek with one hand. Sasuke's departure from the village is still under investigation. There is no evidence to prove that Sasuke was coerced to leave the village, so there is a possibility that he took the initiative to leave the village. If he took the initiative to leave the village, then this behavior can be classified as betraying the village. Before she finished speaking, Sakura Haruno panicked and shouted, "Sasuke will never betray the village. It must be Orochimaru who took him away." Tsunade's mouth was half open, and she swallowed the rest of the words uncomfortably, and then asked, Who told you that Sasuke leaving the village is related to Orochimaru? Sakura Haruno opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She couldn't say that she saw Sasuke and 4 Otogekure ninja leave the village. If she said it, then wouldn't Sasuke betray the village? Tsunade stared at Sakura Haruno, and Hinata also looked at Sakura Haruno. The scene was a little tense for a while. Naruto, who was leaning against the wall, rolled his eyes. This idiot girl. Although Naruto also wanted to know how she knew, Naruto felt that the result would be terrible if she continued to talk. He got up, then put the documents on the desk, and interrupted, "Tsunade-san, these are the documents that Grandma Kochin asked me to bring over. She said that you have to read all of them before Tion turns dark today, and then deal with them." The documents fell on the table, and with a bang, a burst of smoke and dust was raised. There was also a lot of ash. Naruto estimated that it should be the old man Mitokado Hamura who got it on the documents. Well, these documents were lucky enough not to be ignited by the ash. What an unreliable old man. Tsunade stared at Naruto's 1-meter-tall document and exclaimed, "So many. Are you trying to kill me?" Naruto shrugged. Grandpa Hamura said that it's all about the reconstruction of Wood Leaf and the compensation for the damage of several shops. He said that if it's Princess Tsunade, it'll be a piece of cake. Tsunade's mouth twitched, then she glanced at Sakura Haruno, waved her hand, and said, "If there's nothing else, you can go and rest. From tomorrow onwards, there will be a lot of Wood Leaf tasks. You may not be so idle." Sakura Haruno looked at Naruto with a complicated expression, then bowed and left. Hinata was a little embarrassed. In the end, she waved her hand at Naruto. After they left, Naruto asked, "Sister Tsunade, when can I make my potion? It's really uncomfortable to have no hair." Tsunade's mouth twitched again, and she said bitterly, "Do you really want to kill me?" Then he saw Shizune coming in with Tutu in her arms. He rolled his eyes and smirked. "Why don't you let Shizune make it for you?" Shizune, who was holding Tutu, was about to refute, but then she thought about it, and her eyes suddenly lit up, and she agreed, "Okay, I can make this potion too." Would Naruto dare to let Shizune make it? Not even if he was beaten to death. He shook his head like a rattle. "Forget it, I won't trouble Shizune, sister. Actually, there's no hurry. Sister Tsunade can make it for me tomorrow." If he let Shizune make it, what if she made a strange potion that farts in the head? Farts in the head? The scene was too magical, and Naruto shivered. Then Tsunade began to work, and Naruto acted as a coolie, helping to serve tea and water. Jiraiya? I don't know where that guy went. Just when Naruto was about to yawn out of boredom, Tsunade suddenly exclaimed, "Damn! This compensation is fake." Naruto leaned over to take a look, and he almost spat out. It was a claim from a ninja store, and the total amount was 100 million. 100 million. What kind of concept is that? An S-level mission is only 1 million. That's 100 S-level missions. The number of S-level missions issued by Wood Leaf in a year is less than 10. It was a little more during the war, and it was less than 50 at most. Naruto looked at the name of the store again. "Okay, let's go to the ninja store." He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The store manager's store. Which store manager? Of course, it's the one who went to shoot a movie with his daughter. Haru Sakuratani and Natsuya Sakuragi are really daring. This number isn't written casually, right? That's ridiculous. Even if Sandame Naruto had Alzheimer's, he wouldn't approve it, let alone Tsunade. "Naruto, help me sort out the subsidiary documents of this store. I want to see what's lost and why they need to compensate 100 million. Shizune, go and get the documents of this store's purchase order." Naruto swallowed, looked at the catalog number, and then forced himself to pull out the subsidiary documents, which was the list of compensation. This time, the stack of documents was directly reduced by half, and most of these documents were about one thing. The pages of the book flipped, and it was filled with so many orders that it made one's head spin. A minute later, Shizune also took it back. Tsunade began to compare. "Huh? This pile of purchase orders is actually related to the last 5 years. Shizen, bring the first 4 years. Then there was a dizzying comparison. Naruto and Shizen helped. The final result was that the purchase orders were all true. Naruto, dig out the field investigation information of this store. Then, 2/3 of the remaining half of the documents were suddenly reduced. Regardless of whether this scam was successful or not, Naruto now admired the two girls. With so much information, even if he used the shadow clone jutsu, it would take 3 days and 3 nights to sort it out. Most of this pile of information was photos of the Wood Leaf Ninja Path, evidence, and interrogation records. The first page was flipped open, and there was a blown-up front. The kind that was emitting black smoke looked quite miserable. The next photo was of a pair of sisters hugging each other and crying. It was called Pear Blossoms in the Rain. Just looking at the photo, one could almost hear the crying. This acting. It's a waste that these two girls didn't go to film with their master. Further behind were the burned remains of the detonation talismans. Half of the talismans had been burned away, and there were tears and dark handprints on them. From this photo, Naruto seemed to be able to see a stack of money burning in the fire, and then a helpless girl throwing herself into the fire to save the money. There were also various chakra test strips, ninja protective clothing, and various scrolls. The price tag of each of them was shockingly high, but after checking, it was confirmed that it was indeed the real price. Of course, the most terrifying thing was the burning banknotes. The banknotes were in the attached documents. After Mute confirmed it, she swallowed and said, "It's real." This was a pain in the ass. The burning banknotes totaled 50 million taels, half of 100 million taels. After spending 3 hours looking through all the information, the three of them couldn't find any suspicious points. Tsunade only felt her head hurt. She kept poking her temple with her hand, as if she wanted to rub herself to death. Woodleaf didn't have a lot of funds. What should I do? She was so desperate. Tsunade closed her eyes and asked, "Besides the 100 million taels compensation, are there any other lawsuits?" Mute confirmed it again and swallowed her saliva. "That's all. No, there's a note that says Woodleaf is too dangerous. I want to go home." Naruto resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Was she going to take the money and leave? Didn't she say that she wanted a large free storefront and half of it to open a bakery? And there seemed to be shares that he wouldn't report. Was she playing hard to get? Taking the initiative to ask Woodleaf to mention the land compensation? What if Woodleaf didn't mention it? Well, such a large compensation would definitely have to be negotiated face to face, and then there would be more negotiations. In other words, this was the real-life version of asking for a sky-high price and sitting on the ground to pay. Amazing, my two sisters. If Haru Sakuratani and Natsuya Sakuragi knew that Naruto had analyzed the plan with only his imagination, they would probably exclaim that their master was amazing. Chapter 169. Let's put aside the 100 million compensation for now. There was no way to deal with it. Then, what was even more surprising was that there were 3 more ninja store claims. But they weren't as scary as the first one, and the compensation was only around 1 million ryo. But surprisingly, there were 3 requests to terminate the contract at the same time. What contract? It's the contract to open a store in Woodleaf. Simply put, they wanted to slip away. This wouldn't be the work of those 2 girls. If that was the case, then these 2 girls were really generous. If not, it's a bit too much of a coincidence. Woodleaf has a total of 5 ninja stores. Putting aside the 3 store claims, Tsunade was about to look through the others. She found that there were no more. After half a day, the 4 ninja stores accounted for 80% of all the documents. Tsunade poked her temple and complained, "I'm starting to regret agreeing to Jiraiya's return." Should she report the Sakuratani sisters? Of course not. The money to scam Woodleaf wasn't to scam Tsunade. Although Tsunade had decision-making power as Naruto, it was only decision-making power. Tsunade looked at Shizen for help, then glanced at Naruto. Shizen was stroking Dolphin, and Naruto, was stroking his bald head. Tsunade suddenly felt a little itchy and called Naruto. Naruto, come here. Naruto was actually just scratching his head, but when he heard Tsunade calling him, he came over and asked, "What's the matter?" Tsunade ordered, "Turn around." Then Naruto obediently turned around. Tsunade raised her hand and patted Naruto's head. "Let's get some IQ." Then, she stroked Naruto's head like she was stroking Dolphin. Naruto's expression was pained, and his eyes were filled with resentment. Was it really comfortable to touch a bald head? "It seems that I've been stroking his head more and more recently. No, I have to let my hair grow back quickly. I can't have this strange habit. Tsunade-san, I have some ideas." Tsunade's hand continued to stroke Naruto's head, and she said lazily, "Speak." Naruto resisted the urge to throw Tsunade over his shoulder and continued, "Woodleaf has a total of 5 ninja shops. If these 4 shops leave, it will be bad for Woodleaf." Tsunade replied, "Yes, no matter what, it's not good to have a monopoly." Naruto continued, "Then let's talk to the 3 families first to understand the reason for leaving Woodleaf. If we can salvage the situation, we can. If we can't, we can only think of a way with the last family." Tsunade's hand stopped. "How do we find a solution on the last house?" Naruto suddenly had an idea of how to stop. Don't tell me I like it when someone rubs my head? The ninja shop has the highest loss. If they don't get compensation, they won't leave easily. So we can use the compensation to keep them in Woodleaf and contain the other ninja shop. Then Woodleaf can take advantage of this time to find other partners. Tsunade's eyes lit up and felt that Naruto's words were a bit interesting. She continued to stroke his head and asked, "How do we keep them in suspense?" Naruto took out a photo of the ruins. This bombed library was hosted by Woodleaf. It's recorded that 90% of the books in it have been burned. It's better to strip the library, then build a store here, and then rent the store to the ninja shop for free. With this, we can reach compensation and let the other party continue to open a store in Woodleaf, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Slap. Tsunade slapped Naruto's head and said in surprise, "This is a good idea. How did you think of it?" This was not comfortable at all. The moment he was slapped, Naruto was shocked. For a moment, he wanted to slap back, but he didn't dare, so his expression became more bitter. He turned away from Tsunade's hand and said, "I know the owner of this store. The owner of this store taught me sword making. He's my teacher in sword making, so I don't want him to leave Woodleaf. This method is a win-win solution." Tsunade was surprised. "You know how to make swords?" Naruto nodded and raised his sword. "I also participated in the forging of this sword." Because of his injuries, Naruto didn't use the big hammer on the way back, so Tsunade didn't know that Naruto knew how to make swords. Tsunade picked up the photo and looked at the Sakuragi sisters, and asked curiously, "Then which of these 2 girls is your master?" Naruto replied, "Neither of them, those 2 are just shop assistants. The owner of that store is not in Woodleaf." Tsunade nodded and said in surprise, "So, this information was sorted out by the 2 shop assistants?" Naruto was taken aback. He looked at the information and was also surprised. "I'm also a little shocked that they are so capable." Would Tsunade be suspicious because they were too capable? But it didn't matter even if she was suspicious. After all, they just asked for a free store. For Tsunade, this matter was solved perfectly. Just when Naruto was a little worried, Tsunade sighed, "It seems that they were really forced out. The loss is so big, these 2 girls are probably scared." Then she picked up another photo and said, "But since it's someone you know, and the owner is your sword-making master, then give him a better store. I think this one is better than that broken library. Naruto, what do you think?" Naruto looked at Tsunade's finger. It was a row of 5 bomb shops. The total area added up is probably the size of 2 libraries. Naruto asked uncertainly, "Tsunade-san, do you mean one of them, or the 5 in the photo?" Tsunade smiled and said, "One is too stingy, how about 5? Naruto licked his lips and glanced at the street number again. Woodleaf was more prosperous, closer to the center, surrounded by 4 main roads. These 5 shops couldn't be any better. I can't be greedy. Naruto warned himself and said seriously, it's still too much, 2 is enough. Tsunade looked at Naruto and smiled, then I'll add a condition. Let them operate the 3 shops as they wish, whether they build a big one or do other business separately, it doesn't matter. Let them build a big casino for me in 2 of them. Casino? Naruto looked at Tsunade. This is for personal gain. And it's for personal gain. Compared to her, I'm so weak. She's worthy of being my sensei. But fortunately, it's Tsunade who's sitting here. If it's Jiraiya, I'm afraid he'll open a house. No, with Jiraiya's brain, he can't think of this. If he can, he will definitely take the initiative to sit in this position. Naruto smiled and said, I think the store manager should agree. Tsunade smiled and said, then I'll leave this matter to you. Naruto was taken aback and pointed to his nose and said, me? Don't tell me I'm exposed. Tsunade walked to Naruto and raised her hand while stroking Naruto's head and said, you're his disciple, right? As far as I know, the inheritance of a swordsmith and a talisman master are very strict and private, and it's rarely passed to outsiders. Since he taught you, it means that he doesn't treat you as an outsider. This sentence is very reasonable. The store manager did not treat him as an outsider. He gave him the whole house and 2 maids. Naruto asked blankly, whose name is the casino? Sister Tsunade's? Tsunade rolled her eyes at Naruto, that's too arrogant. It will cause criticism, so it will be under your name. Naruto blinked again. Under my name? This was also very grand, alright? Moreover, it's a casino. It's very violent. Naruto said uncertainly, will Grandma Kochin and Grandpa Homura agree? Tsunade smiled and said, if they don't agree, let them pay the 100 million taels. Naruto blinked, took a breath of cold air, and praised, brilliant. It's really brilliant. I think Sister Tsunade is born to be a person with great power. You are the princess. Tsunade stroked Naruto's head and praised, it's comfortable to call you princess. If you are tired of calling Sister Tsunade, you can call me Sister Princess. Naruto blinked and said cutely, Sister Princess? Tsunade stroked his head even more happily. Naruto enjoyed it for a while, restrained himself from indulging in the feeling of being stroked, and asked, Sister Princess, it's still early. Shouldn't you prepare the medicine for me? Shizune held Tun-Tun on the side and saw the whole process of abusing power for personal gain. She couldn't help but start to mourn for Woodleaf's tomorrow. Chapter 170. 2 out of the 5 shops would be combined into a ninja equipment store, and the area would be more than twice as large as before. Natsuya Sakuragi wanted to open a pastry shop that was as large as the original ninja equipment store. The 2 shops would be connected to a casino. And according to Naruto's design, the casino would be built on at least 3 floors. The first floor would be a lottery station, the second floor would be entertainment, and the third floor would be a casino. This inspired the Sakuragi sisters, and so the ninja shop would be built on 3 floors as well. The pastry shop's 3 floors would be an exaggeration, and it would be changed into a coffee, pastry, and flower shop. The first floor would be filled with flowers, the third floor would be filled with pastries, and the second floor would be divided into 2 sections with seats for dating and enjoying pastries. Seeing this, Naruto suggested, why don't we connect the second and third floors, and set up a projection system to turn it into a movie theater? And so, there were even more designs for that shop. Haru Sakuratani and Natsuya Sakuragi became busy, and they had Woodleaf to help with the construction. Of course, these 5 shops wouldn't be free forever. These 5 shops would be given to the shop owners in the form of land for a period of 10 years, and the free trial rights would be converted into 50 million ryo in compensation. The remaining 50 million ryo would be settled later, and could be compensated by releasing quests, or by other means, including construction. A week after construction began, Naruto's hair had grown an inch long. This was an amazing growth rate, but what made Naruto despair was that the hair that grew out was colorful, Tsunade-san, should we continue observing? Naruto's office was filled with despair. Naruto's expression was one of despair. Tsunade pinched Naruto's chin and observed Naruto's hair. After thinking for a long time, she said affirmatively, "Naruto, I think it looks pretty good like this." Naruto was about to cry. "Tsunade-san, it's fine even if you change the color. But, what's with the colorful hair?" Tsunade suppressed her laughter and glanced at Shizune. How could she not tell that Shizune had tampered with her recipe? Shizune turned her head to look at the sky, and she couldn't hide the smile in her eyes. This could be seen from the frequency with which he stroked Tun-Tun. His heart was absolutely bursting with joy. Tsunade said seriously, "You really don't want the colored one?" Naruto's big watery eyes glistened with tears as he shook his head like a rattledrum. Tsunade rubbed Naruto's head for a while and smiled, "What color do you want?" "Change colors?" Naruto thought for a moment and said with certainty, "Just change back to the original color." And so, a week later, Naruto's hair had turned into Jiraiya's white dog fur. Naruto desperately said, "Sister Tsunade, my hair was originally yellow, golden yellow." Another week passed, and Naruto's hair turned beige. Coupled with Naruto's snow-white skin, he looked just like Ino's little brother. It was an indescribable feminine beauty. Tsunade asked, "You don't like it?" Naruto looked at himself in the mirror. He felt like he didn't recognize himself anymore. Then, he shook his head desperately. Another week passed, and his face turned cherry red. Naruto couldn't help but complain, "Is this Sakura's little brother?" "No, it's her older brother." Then, he changed again, and his hair stopped growing. In Naruto's office, Naruto said with a haggard face, "Sister Tsunade, a week has passed, and my hair hasn't grown at all." Tsunade carefully examined Naruto and said seriously, "It seems that the roots of your hair are injured." Naruto asked blankly, "Will I never grow hair again?" Tsunade said seriously, "From my observation, I'm afraid you'll have to learn my creative regeneration technique to repair your cells." Naruto's face was ashen. He asked weakly, "How long will it take?" Tsunade thought for a moment and replied, "Before learning the creative regeneration technique, you'll have to learn the Ein seal first." She pointed to the purple diamond-shaped mark on her forehead and said, "That's it. Because if you want to fully activate the creative regeneration technique, you'll need a very large amount of chakra." Chakra? He didn't lack chakra at all. Naruto's eyes lit up and said tentatively, "I have a lot of chakra. Can I skip the step of the Ein seal and learn the creative regeneration technique directly?" Tsunade shook her head firmly and said, "This isn't about having a lot of chakra. The Ein seal is formed by gathering yang chakra. Only yang chakra can make the creative regeneration technique work. So I have to learn it." "Then I'll learn it, however," Tsunade said again. "If you want to learn the Ein seal, you'll have to learn the sealing technique first, because the Ein seal uses the principles of the sealing technique. If you don't learn it, once you make a mistake, the chakra gathered on your forehead will explode." Naruto's eyes lost their light. He seemed to see his hair waving goodbye to him. At this moment, there was a knock on Naruto's office door. It was Hanatsuki-sensei, followed by a man with tears streaming down his face. When Hanatsuki saw Naruto, she was pleasantly surprised and said, "Naruto, you're here. I was looking for you. Our first case was a success." First case? Well, this case was what Naruto's hair was mainly doing this month. It was also the artificial limb project that Chunin told Hanatsuki at the exam venue. It was to install artificial limbs for disabled people. The inspiration came from the puppet jutsu. Therefore, it was only useful for ninjas with chakra. Naruto looked at the man with tears streaming down his face. The man's right hand was made of wood, and it was pieced together like spare parts. When the man saw Naruto looking at him, he couldn't control his tears anymore. His knees went soft and he was about to kneel down. However, Naruto pulled him up with wind release. "Don't kneel in front of me. That will make me think that I'm dead." It wasn't a very funny joke, but the man cried and laughed at the same time. "I thought that I would never be able to walk like a normal person again. I thought, As he spoke, his tears flowed down, and he couldn't even speak clearly. Naruto looked at the man's left foot. Naruto knew that the foot from the calf was also a prosthetic limb. Tsunade and Shizun also walked over. Tsunade looked at the man's hand. Although it was carved out of wood, every joint was very fine. If there was a layer of fake skin, it would be impossible to tell if it was real or fake. Tsunade said to the man, "Open your hand, clench your fist, open your fingers, close your fingers." The man made various movements with his hand while crying. Shizun exclaimed, "It's as nimble as a real hand." Naruto said proudly, "That's just the standard version. As long as I want to, I can install all kinds of hidden weapons on the official version. When the time comes, it'll be even more nimble than a real hand." Tsunade's eyes lit up after hearing this. If that's the case, then it's not an innovation in the medical field, but a reform in combat ninja equipment. Her voice trembled with excitement. "Naruto, do you know what you've done?" Naruto laughed and said, "A smaller sacrifice, a stronger ninja." Can artificial limbs only be used for disabled people? No. Naruto intends to build an exoskeleton-like armor. When the time comes, humph, 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 humph. Chapter 171. After the success of the first case of artificial limbs, this project was also established in Woodleaf. Then, a research group was established. Naruto, as the initiator of the project, was promoted to team leader. Tsunade was the honorary team leader. The deputy team leader was Hana Kazuma, and the team members. Shizun, the others were still waiting to be selected. Of course, while gaining glory, there was naturally jealousy. Naruto was too lazy to care about these in his current state, but with his temper, he couldn't bear it for long. Woodleaf Medical Ninja Gathering, Tsunade hadn't come yet, so everyone was waiting. Naruto said to Shizun beside him, "Shizun-ne-san, where is Tsunade-san?" Since the fought candy incident, Shizun didn't like Naruto very much. But later, she got back at him about his hair, and her anger was almost vented. Now that Naruto was very successful in medical ninjutsu, the two could communicate normally. But it was limited to normal communication. Shizun hugged Tutu as usual and replied, "She went to the cemetery." Naturally, she went to the cemetery to visit her dead ex-boyfriend and brother Nawaki. Since Tsunade returned to the village, she went there almost every day. Naruto nodded. In fact, there was a question that had been bothering Naruto. That is, what happened 7 days after he fainted? Why did Tsunade obediently return to Woodleaf as Naruto? According to the development of the original world, Tsunade didn't want to at first, and she was very disgusted. Naruto asked this question to Jiraiya, but he didn't get anything out of it. He also asked Nine Tails. Nine Tails said that after Naruto fainted, it didn't know what happened outside. While he was thinking, Tsunade came back. Naruto subconsciously looked at the time. It was completely on time. It was worth learning. The meeting began. Today's meeting was mainly about the newly established Artificial Limbs project. It was a bit like a product launch. First, the artificial limbs were introduced, followed by questions. The speaker was Dr. Naruto, the person in charge of the project. After introducing the functions and application prospects of the prosthetic limb, someone raised his hand and asked, "Excuse me, you said that the prosthetic limb was inspired by Sannin's puppetry, but as far as I know, inspiration alone is not enough. The reason why Sannin's puppets can be controlled so flexibly is not only because they can use the special chakra wire, but also because the material of the puppet itself is very particular. How did you solve these two problems?" The person who asked the question was very respectful. Medical ninja was a profession that prioritized those who reached the top. It was rare for them to determine their prestige based on their age, which was something that Naruto liked very much. Therefore, he replied generously, "These 2 points can't be separated from Sannin's outstanding contribution to Woodleaf." Of course, this contribution wasn't voluntary, nor was it requested. I'm sure everyone knows about the Chunin exam not long ago. I was one of the participants. Well, in the end I failed. Some humorous self-deprecation made a few friendly laughs. Then Naruto shrugged his shoulders and continued, but although I didn't succeed in being promoted to Chunin in the exam, I passed the medical ninja assessment this morning and was promoted to Chunin. And compared to a normal Chunin, the benefits are better. The people below laughed again. Shizen rolled her eyes and muttered, "It's all nonsense." Tsunade next to her was very appreciative and whispered to Shizen, "Although it's indeed nonsense, Naruto successfully aroused everyone's interest, livened up the atmosphere of the meeting, and also closed the gap. Even I can't do this, so you have to learn from him." Shizen was still unhappy. He just likes to play tricks. Besides, if Tsunade-sama stands in front, who dares to not listen? Tsunade replied, "I'm famous because I'm one of the Sannin and have a reputation in medical ninjutsu. Naruto didn't have anything before, but now the effect of his words is very close to mine, so you still have to learn from him." Shizen rolled her eyes. In fact, she also felt Naruto's power, but it would be embarrassing to say it out loud. On the podium, Naruto summoned a puppet, the crow, that he snatched from Kankuro, and formally explained, "Thanks to Chunin's exam, I got a good little guy from Sannin's hands. First, let's talk about the chakra line that operates the puppet. That's the secret of puppeteers, I don't know, but I tried the chakra line of medical ninjutsu, and the effect was very poor, and I couldn't control the puppet from a distance." After saying that, Naruto demonstrated. He raised his right hand, and a chakra line connected to the crow puppet. Then, the crow began to move. A meter away, there was a sudden silence. If Chunin's promotion through the medical ninjutsu narrowed the distance between them, then now it's a real show of skill. Chakra line is an advanced skill of medical ninjutsu. Everyone present is a professional. How can they not see that Naruto's use of chakra line is already very superb? At least more than half of the people here can't complete Naruto's operation. Then the puppet began to move forward, and it moved another meter away. At this moment, even Shizen's eyes widened, and she lost her voice. Is he abnormal? Then when the crow walked 3 meters away, it finally fell to the ground softly. Applause rang out in the venue. It was so loud that it seemed as if it wanted to clap the hands off. It was very imposing. Then Naruto waved his hand, and the puppet quickly returned to Naruto's hand. Shizen's eyelids twitched. She had a feeling that 3 meters was definitely not the limit of Naruto's control. After memorizing the plant dictionary, Shizen's understanding of Naruto was once again refreshed, from 2 words, abnormal, to 3 words, big abnormal. Tsunade's eyes couldn't help but light up, because she just succeeded Naruto, she didn't have time to teach Naruto anything. Therefore, many aspects of Naruto are still very vague. She muttered, "It seems that it's time to explore the bottom of this little guy. Such a good talent must be cultivated quickly, it will be wasted if it's too long." The puppet was held in Naruto's hand, and the joints on its body began to make various movements flexibly. At the same time, he explained, although the medical ninja's chakra thread can't be controlled remotely, it's very convenient to control it from a distance. The prosthetic limb can be controlled flexibly, mainly because the medical ninja connects the injured body with the chakra thread. It's known that the medical ninja's chakra thread can be used to suture the wound of the injured. One is the caster's chakra thread, and the other is the patient's chakra thread. In this way, after the medical ninja cancels the transmission of the chakra thread, the patient's chakra thread will continue to maintain the chakra thread. The second problem is the selection of materials. This is thanks to this little puppet. Everyone can see that the puppet's left arm is missing because I decomposed it. A kind of metal was smelted from it. Because of confidentiality reasons, I won't say what kind of metal it is. In short, the 2 difficulties are perfectly solved with Sannin's contribution. The applause sounded again. Then someone asked, "Then can I ask how you decomposed the material?" Sannin's puppet, Wood Leaf, has been studying it for a long time, but there has been no substantial progress. This question was a bit confidential. Naruto smiled and said, "Because in addition to being a medical ninja, I'm also half a swordsmith. I decomposed it with a sledgehammer." "Swordsmith?" The little guy in front of them is also a swordsmith? Can he be more amazing? After the amazement, a discordant voice suddenly sounded from below. The village has always been blank in the field of swordsmithing. As Naruto's disciple, you will give this technology to the village, right? Which idiot asked such a question? Everyone looked at the source of the voice. Tsunade was also curious about the cute guy who asked such a brainless question. Either his love for Wood Leaf was too deep, or he lost his mind. Naruto also looked over and recognized that this guy was the one who was clapping just now, but he didn't. Then Naruto decided to do something. Topics like moral coercion were not difficult for him. Naruto asked seriously, "Do you have a wife?" The man was a little uncomfortable with everyone looking at him, and he also realized that his question was a bit inappropriate. Hearing Naruto's question, he subconsciously replied, "Yes." Then Naruto continued to ask, "Is she that beautiful?" The man raised his eyebrows and replied, "Yes." Then Naruto asked again, "Then do you have a daughter?" The man's eyebrows furrowed deeper, but he still replied, "Yes." Naruto repeated, "Is your daughter beautiful?" The man was a little impatient, and his veins were twitching, but he didn't dare to go too far with so many people looking at him. He replied, "Yes." Naruto smiled and said, "Then can you lend your wife and daughter to everyone here to play with?" Tsunade and Shizun burst out laughing. The other women glared at the little guy on the stage, but they weren't very hostile. There was a hint of warning and blame, and it was very intimate. It was like an elder sister scolding a younger brother who didn't know what to say. And all the men. Some choked on their saliva and coughed, and some had already begun to imagine. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.